It's 5:15 and I'd like to call the April 9th, 2026 joint work session of the Staunton City Council and the Staunton City School Board to order. Would a member of council like to make a motion to approve work session and regular meeting?
Mayor Edwards,
Yes,
I
Councilor
move
Woods.
to approve the work session and regular meeting just as presented.
All right, thank you.
And do we have to make a motion?
We do to allow Mr. Overholtzer.
So I'll make a motion to permit
I got
Councilor
got
Overholtzer
excited, Mr. Blair. Hold on.
to remotely participate.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna read this first, okay?
Do you,
Okay. Just a second, I'm sorry. On March 31st, 2026, I received a request from Councilor Overholtzer to participate remotely in the April 9th, 2026 Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter that prevents his physical attendance at the meeting. Pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, I will now ask Councilor Overholtzer to state the personal matter that makes him unable to attend tonight's meeting.
I am on vacation.
Oh, that doesn't sound like a
That's
good
loud.
reason. All righty, I will now
It's
entertain.
insane.
Thank you, Mr. Counselor. I will now entertain a motion to allow Counselor Overholtzer's remote participation in this meeting pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3.
Mayor Edwards.
Counselor Woods.
I offer a motion to allow Councilor Overholtzer to participate remotely pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedure Memorandum Number 3. I move to allow Councilor Overholtzer to remotely participate in the April 9th, 2026 Staunton City Council meeting due to a personal matter.
Thank you, Counselor Woods. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you. Mr. Blair, is there any discussion? Would you call the roll, Mr. Blair?
Ms. Park?
Aye.
Ms. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell? Absent. Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood?
Aye.
Mayor Edwards?
Aye. Thank you. Counselor Overholtzer, could you please tell us where you are participating from?
Yes, I am in Nags Head, North Carolina.
Very nice. Can everybody in the room and remotely hear Mr. Overholtzer?
Oh, yeah.
Loud and
Loud and clear,
Definitely.
better than I can hear myself. All righty then.
Sorry.
So,
Not your fault.
now, thank you, Mr. Overholtzer. Would a member of council like to second the motion? We already did this.
We already did it.
Right, Ms. Woods,
Yeah.
you made the motion.
You
to
made the
approve
motion.
Agenda.
Yes.
And
so
we seconded.
Somebody need to second it.
Ms. Park,
I
second.
second it.
All righty, is there any discussion about this? Hearing none, I will ask Mr. Blair to please call the roll.
Ms. Park?
Aye.
Mr. Overholtzer?
Aye.
Ms. Woods?
Aye.
Mr. Campbell is absent. Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood?
Aye.
Mayor Edwards?
Aye,
Motion carries.
thank you. And Madam Chair, would you like to call your meeting to order?
Sure, we'll call this meeting of the Staunton City School Board to order.
Excellent. Do you have to?
Nope.
All righty, so we're moving on to item 2 this evening. We have a joint work session with the Staunton City School Board and the school superintendent to discuss the FY 2027 school board budget. And here's Ms. Beauregard, Ms.
We're
Moyers.
actually gonna kick it off, if that's okay. So, Ms. Moyers prepared
Okay,
a very trimmed down version of the budget presentation from last week, just to kind of kick off the discussion. She's gonna take like 5 minutes to do that. I sent it to you earlier today, so hopefully you got a chance to look at it. So
Have to do with my hands.
take off,
do this with my
yeah.
hands. So FY 27 budget proposed increase of almost $4 million. That's 2.4%. General fund is 83.3 of that. That's a $3.5 million increase or 4.41% over FY 26. So this slide shows where the money is coming from, the $3.5 million. This is not an assessment year. There's no proposed tax changes to the real estate or the personal property. This real estate growth, the 357,000 is from new properties. And then the personal property tax rate, the 696, is adjusting up to Maggie's last actual bill. Other local taxes, a little over $1 million. That is matching sales, meals, and business license and the lodging, very close to what they're actually proposed to bring in this year. Cigarette tax, that is an increase from 30 cents to 40 cents per pack. Additional $90,000 in revenue. Service charges are $332,000. State and federal, $861,000. And all other, including the economic mobility grant, is $185,000. So where's the money going? 1.46 is going to schools. That is per the funding formula. 242,000 is the police department comp plan. This is phase 2 and the final phase. Phase 1 was implemented last budget cycle. Salaries and benefits, we have a 3% cost of living. Insurance, the economic mobility grant funded position. And then we were very lucky that our VRS rate declined. That resulted in a $333,000 savings for the general fund alone in the city. Other expenditures, VDOT, that is restricted money, so that can only be spent on VDOT eligible activity, $386,000. Additional tax relief, that's elderly, disabled, and veterans, $70,000. Implementation and migration of Microsoft Office 365, cloud-based product they have. Voting registrar tabulation software, $50,000. Stanton Crossing, mowing, $44,000, and then additional enterprise zone incentives of $30,000. We have some other expenditures there that you can see. And then outside agencies, $297,000. The jail is actually a nice cost savings in the FY27 budget. They are returning some of their excess fund balance to localities. And our usage of the jail went down, so that helps. So budget balancing, this budget doesn't fund a lot of operating requests. It doesn't fund any new positions in the general fund. It doesn't fund any upgraded positions from part-time to full-time. There are $1.5 million in operation and expenditures requests that remain unfunded. We have $300,000 built in for attrition savings. Debt service is being funded mostly by a general fund transfer. There is about $900,000 that we are not able to fund out of the general fund transfer. It's being funded out of the debt service sinking fund balance. School funding. As you know, this is a 2-year rolling average based on audited data. So the 27 contribution to schools is based on FY24 and FY25. So 53% of property taxes go to schools, but it's broken over 2 fiscal years. Other local taxes, not including meal sales and the hotel tax, is 12.1, but it's broken over 2 fiscal years. And this is just the calculation. FY24, that was the first year that the formula was put in place. And that just shows the calculations up through FY27. Debt service. We have about 3.4 annually in general fund for the city and 3.1 for the schools. The courthouse debt was a 15-year, so it's kind of compacted in those 15 years and will expire in 2039. CIP, we both suffer from aging infrastructure and large unfunded list. There's about 160 million identified on the school side of unfunded capital needs. With the biggest being the Shelburne renovation, and then Dixon, and then the new op center for 30 million. On the school or the city side, it's about 144 million. With police station and fire improvements being the 2 biggest in the general fund. We also have Uniontown roadway and pedestrian improvements, 6.4, streetscaping, and then we have the big water projects hanging out there of about $50 million. So I hope that left you enough time.
Yeah.
Any questions?
All right. Should be. Okay. A lot of pressure. Yeah. I didn't know where to select. All right. Board Chair, Mayor, thank you for allowing us to just share our budget. What we wanted to do with this presentation was take a little bit of time to explain as best we can on how a school budget is actually put together. It's a really complicated process, but we always like to start with our mission and our vision. And the mission of Staunton City Schools is to empower each student to excel by investing in an inclusive, innovative, and healthy learning community. We do have some celebrations for Staunton City Schools. Sorry, I'm right in your way. So as you know, we're ranked 35th in the state, and that we continue to climb, and we're hoping to continue to climb this year. We've just finished our Empower 2030 strategic plan that hopefully the board will approve on the 13th. That will guide us for the next 4 years. Recently, we were recognized nationally for our support for our at-risk students. And that was a lot of the work done by Nate Collins and his team. We're continuing our Kindness Matters campaign, which is incredibly important, not only to our schools, but to the community. Recently, we also secured a $400,000 grant for after-school programming, and that's going to stay mostly at Shelburne Middle School to support our students there. We know that Shelburne is an area of focus for us in a lot of ways, but especially for providing after-school opportunities for our students. We also have school improvement grants, which are SIG grants and school safety grants to ensure that our buildings and grounds remain safe. And we're continuing to provide free meals for our students. That comes at a significant cost for us, but we feel that's incredibly important for our students, especially given the current economy we're living in right now. We have budgetary pressures just like everyone else. Jesse mentioned our infrastructure, increasing enrollment. There's a national and a state teacher shortage. Our students that are coming in too, we're seeing students that require more services as well. So we are making sure that we're supporting them academically, but also their social emotional needs as well. We'll talk a little bit about the LCI. All-in funding was a funding resource that is expiring this year. So we're going to have to shift our budgetary priorities when it comes to that funding as well. And federal funding uncertainty. We just really don't know what's happening up there right now. So we're, just in the back of our minds, we're just waiting to see how that impacts, especially key programs. A lot of our grants all come from the federal government, and also a lot of our food and nutrition support comes from the federal government as well. And just the general economy is a pressure.
Dr. Irizarry, could I ask one question
Sure.
about the SPED services? You said they're more complex, they're increasing. Is there a disability category that's increasing, or is it just the numbers of students that are
Not
being
par-
identified?
Yeah, not particularly. We're just
Yeah.
seeing a higher rate of students with special needs or students coming in that are exhibiting the need for either extra instructional support or
Mhm.
mental health support.
Mhm.
And I'm jumping ahead, but we've had a growth of 150 students this year alone since September. And we are just seeing a higher number of need coming in. And not all of our SOQ, anyway, go ahead, Nick.
So special ed specifically, we had about
Yeah.
a 25% increase in the number of students with disabilities post-pandemic. And along with that, we are seeing more complex needs for our students requiring higher service levels than
Just
we.
one, yeah, I mean, like learning disabilities, emotional disturbance, intellectual disabilities.
I think it's fair to
physical,
say that autism is probably the fastest growing disability category
And that's that's interesting.
post-pandemic.
Yeah, thank you.
So enrollment and projections, we showed this slide last time. In 2021, you see our numbers here in enrollment. We're at 2740. Our current enrollment right now is 2839. And you'll see that from October 1, this is where we were at October 1 head count of this calendar year. This is what earlier this year we projected 2826 as we started the budget process, but we've already exceeded that number we've already exceeded that number currently for next year. And we use enrollment a lot of different ways. Obviously, the budgeting process for staffing, instructional planning, facilities, and capital, just where do the students need to go? We need to make sure that we provide the spaces for all of their needs, and also resource distribution. Just what resources do our students need? How do they need them? And as we start to see differences in learning styles, we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. 80% of our budget goes to personnel support. So you'll see here that the big blue it's covered up, but that's salary. And then you see the benefits is the other big piece of the pie. So we're in the people business, big people, little people. We talked a little bit about this last time. We do have CIP priorities and, we mentioned those as well. We are in the middle of our capacity study right now. Hopefully that'll end in the next month. And the capital plan that we showed here in the last presentation will shift. Shelburne remains our main priority, but we are starting to see some unbalanced growth in our elementary schools, especially McSwain and Bessie. And there is building on the horizon there as well that we'll talk about. So we're seeing over functional capacity at our 3 schools, McSwain especially. They're at 460 students right now. So we are in the process of looking at putting these mobile units on the field right next to McSwain. Earl has started that process already. Right now, our 4th grade is very large, and that continued to grow throughout the year as well. And next year, that number is going to continue to grow. They need an extra space inside McSwain, so we're going to move another grade level out into our learning cottages. And the learning cottages, they have self-contained bathrooms, and I think there's a small office in there as well. So we'll work with Mr. McCrae and city planning to make sure that we can, meet the needs of those students and the growth associated with those as well. And again, we talked about this last time. These are the numbers we had last time. We didn't really adjust it too much, but there's a lot of new construction on the horizon. We will look at where those areas or where those neighborhoods are popping up. It's mostly on the McSwain district. We're keeping our eye on Ingleside as well to see what happens with that piece of property, but that is in the McSwain district as well. So we're just keeping all of our options open. Bessie's seeing a lot of growth too. They're at functional capacity, but we feel right now they're kind of holding right now. We'll see what those numbers look like at the end of the year to see if mobile units may be a possibility over at Bessie as well. And then CIP, again, we're hoping to work together, the 1% tax. I think that is in the Senate budget language right now. So hopefully that does go through, and that would be an opportunity for us to work together, not only for the referendum, but also that would open up some opportunities for SCAP grants that could pay up to 30% of these projects in the next 3 years. And then I'm going to turn it over to Katina Clater-Fry. Was there any questions about the enrollment? Because I know we're going to talk a little bit about ADM and some different numbers out there, but enrollment really drives and our ADM really drives our budget. It's not a 1-for-1. If we have, we don't get a certain price tag per student, it's really a complex formula. So on your sheet, it does show, I left my sheet. Can you hand me my cheat sheet? You see that flow chart that shows at least the flow, starting with student enrollment. And Katina's going to talk a little more about this, but she'll talk a little bit about ADM, and that's really the state's budget formula for the funding that we receive from the state. We'll talk a little bit about SOQ and then that split between the state and the city as well. I'll awkwardly stand over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
While you're being awkward, could you just explain what functional capacity as opposed to just
building
capacity,
yeah.
building capacity?
Building capacity includes common spaces, hallways, classrooms.
Right.
So functional capacity is how the building is actually being used. So
Right.
where students are in relation to the building. Are we using the building more efficiently? When you look at class sizes as well, some of our funding has cap sizes. So we have, for example, in our K2, we have to keep class sizes below 20. So again, the building may be designed for 25,
Right.
but we have some other state and federal regulations that require different capacity needs in those buildings.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go over the funding to the state funding, which includes our ADM that I will talk about, the basic aid, and any of our just anything from the state. So then the state grants and reimbursement, those are more of our restricted funds. Like we have the CISNA, which are students with intensive support needs. We have our Medicaid reimbursement. We have the literary funding and things that are specific to just a specific fund that things have to be used for. Our local funding, of course, the revenue sharing agreement that Jesse talked about. And then our funding, federal funding, which is a smaller piece. We have our IDEA grant, Title I, 2, 3, 4, 6B. And then the nutrition program reimbursement. Those are a different fund than the education fund, but it is still a national program. Just a little clarification of what enrollment versus ADM. Our enrollment, which we typically have to report on September 30, is the students that are enrolled in Staunton City Schools. It is a point in time snapshot that is our registered students. The ADM is the average number of students enrolled. It adjusts for transfers in and out. It's basically the amount of students enrolled, the membership, attendance, all of that is calculated together to get our ADM. The important date for that is our March 31st. So with the ADM, that does not include preschool. Enrollment includes preschool, ADM does not. And then also the CISNA, those students with intensive support needs, because that is a different funding. And then our CSA students, the Children's Services Act, those are students that, of course, are in residential settings. So there's the difference. We will talk a little more. The ADM is what is used for funding, the budgeting piece, but our overall enrollment includes all of our kiddos that we're responsible for. Another part of the ADM connection and calculation is our standards of quality. Virginia has a required framework for all schools. For resources for the school divisions, it establishes required staffing ratios, instructional programs. These levels are just a baseline so that all school divisions meet that, but no school division just goes through are set with just the SOQ levels. It's not intended to represent best practice, but because our students need additional needs, so we need to staff accordingly to meet those needs. So the state funding, again, that is determined by the state versus the locality. So the LCI composite, local composite index is the ability to pay. The split calculation, the locality's ability to pay is determined by property values, taxable sales, and then the state and, I'm sorry, I missed one. Income tax, and then the taxable sales. So with the next, the impact that we had for FY26, our local composite index was 0.3767. That did increase to the 0.3999. And you'll see, just comparing from last year to this year, that was a $760,000 impact for the local side, and a decrease on the state side of funding. Of course, our local funding comes from the city, which I appreciate being a new finance director of having a revenue sharing agreement, so we can go ahead and start building the budget because I kind of know ahead of time compared to other divisions. I won't go back over that since Jesse spoke about that. So then, according to our overall proposed budget, the total is 55 million, just over that. Obviously, the majority of that is our education fund, the 49 million. I did list our food and nutrition is at 2.1. The state operated program fund is a little over 3 million. Textbook at 403, and then our capital improvement is the $200,000 that we do a direct transfer from education to the CIP.
And our budget assumptions, we look at our ADM, which is, we're going to budget next year for 2530 for FY27. We're looking at our federal revenues. Again, they're estimates based on the current title funding through the revenue sharing agreement. Again, that's like Katina said, we really appreciate that. That makes our budgeting a lot easier on our end ahead of time. We did have, again, a decrease in VRS. And then again, we like to just reiterate, our budget proposal is contingent on the governor signing the budget for this year. And kind of what does that look like as far as our assumptions? So we've had some revenue increases, obviously. Again, thank you for the funding agreement. It was a 1.4 increase this year. Federal, we saw a little increase of 132,000 state funding, and we can explain that as well. Because we budgeted our ADM a little higher, that means we're going to use more money during the school year for teaching positions and instructional uses during the school year as opposed to the end of the school year when we would get money again after the March 31st head count. We had again a VRS savings of 291,000. And then we had increases. The COLA is 1.5 million. We do have 6 new positions to support our increased enrollment at 600,000. Obviously, our health insurance went up for the city and for city schools. And then we had the LCI impact as well. And we're also budgeting for increased utilities, educational supplies. And we're keeping in the back of our mind too, the food and nutrition department runs itself. But we are concerned about the cost of food and services going up. So we are keeping an eye on that, and we may have to use some of our operational budget to help support to ensure that we have free lunch and breakfast for all of our students.
And if I can piggyback on the ADM, for instance, this year, the FY26 budget that was proposed, it had the ADM listed at 2,500. So that's what we budgeted on. But because our now current ADM as of March 31st is around 2,559. So the VDOE will true up those dollars of where we actually are. So moving forward, we're trying to budget according to where we still conservatively, but a little closer to where we are so that we can have those funds throughout the school year.
And it's a guessing game. We're looking at all of our data and you try to balance it out. But, if you budget too much, and you lose enrollment, then you end up truing it up in the opposite way, with, you don't want to be on that side of it. So you do try to budget conservatively, and there's always a little bit at the end that we use for, for one-time funding and for carryover. Yeah.
This is just the projected revenue with the dollars attached, state 25, almost 26 million. Of course, the city of Staunton, the 20.3. Grants to include state and federal, almost 3 million, and then some miscellaneous at 187,000 to get us to our education fund of 49 million. Of course, our 3 main budget priorities are the salary increase, the health insurance, and staffing. So you'll see Dr. Irizarry mentioned 6 teachers, 5 would be coming from the education and then from operating, and then 1 would be funded through our Title 6B IDEA grant. Salary increase, 3% across all employees, and then for teachers for step 20 and above, it would be an additional 1%. Important to keep our veteran teachers, of course. And then the increase in health insurance, which I know was mentioned before, the 12% increase. So would you like to finalize or?
Yeah, so again, we're presenting our budget. The good news is we're not asking for any more money. But we do want to thank you for the revenue sharing again. It does help us to level, it really helps us to absorb some of these changes that we're seeing. And it's a moving target. Our budget is not straightforward. But we're optimistic with the growth that we've seen this year and the growth that we're seeing, the city is seeing, that our numbers will continue to increase. And, our job is trying to predict ahead of time. These students will arrive a lot quicker than they're putting up homes right now. And we just want to make sure that we're prepared. We have spaces in the building and we're ready to meet the needs of our students. So.
And as far as the state, our overall average for enrollment is declining, but like Madison, Nelson, some of those counties have a decrease, but we are increasing here. So trying to budget accordingly.
Any questions from counselors? Do you have time for 1 or 2 questions?
One question. I didn't look that closely. You mentioned Bessie enrollment and McSwain increases and the need for more space. I didn't look that closely at the other schools. And I know like when Dixon got rearranged and they split and redistrict. Would redistricting help at all with population?
It could. Dixon would have to be renovated. It has not been renovated since it was built. So right now we're just using it for our 170 pre-K students, some of our other programs.
Right.
But long-term, we may have to look at shifting some of our boundaries a bit to balance it. But with the growth we're seeing, I think that would possibly be a Band-Aid because we are seeing growth in all of our school districts. We're just seeing the bulk of it at McSwain and Bessie right now.
Okay.
If we have no more questions, we'll end our work session, but I truly appreciate it. If anyone has a final question, we'll call the meeting. Thank you all very, very much. This was absolutely terrifically informative. And I appreciate you answering my questions. I'm always curious, as a teacher and former special education teacher, I'm just truly fascinated and appreciate all the work that you do for our schools. Thank you to the school board and to all of you staff for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I need to call our meeting.
Oh, go ahead.
out of
Sorry.
order. That's
Sorry,
okay.
I apologize.
We-
Madam
we're-
Chair, would
yeah.
you like to call your meeting?
Yeah, we will officially end our meeting at 5:46. Thank you.
5:46. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
You're good. You don't have to get through.
Easy to hear.
It's a good problem. It's a
We used
good problem to have. It's a good problem to have.
That was
You
good.
keep putting them up.
Yeah, they-
Keep house numbers.
And all
Thank
all those,
Well, you had.
all those where houses are in my neighborhood. Right down, all the trucks are going up and down my road and
He was saying
lots of kids playing.
from October till now.
No, I'm glad Nate bailed me out.
No, it's
Yeah.
fine.
And well, that, yeah, I just, we're getting our attendance, yeah. That's a lot to do with. It's not necessary right now.
I know.
Okay, okay. I'll just hold on.
Yes.
Not in a lot of detail, no.
And also, it's got great schools, so.
Yeah, and that's, yeah,
We're trying to
exactly.
keep that
We're moving
and
here
make
to.
it, and make it a town that. I mean, we can only drive enrollment so much, right? I mean, the city is also, if it's wants young families, we have to figure out how to make them move here too.
Oh, you did? All right.
It's attractive for families to move here
Yeah.
because.
Hey, y'all. We have a meeting.
Right now.
Uh,
Are you going to? Are you going to?
Yeah. Are you
we
going?
got a meeting.
You want me to text you and let you know the score?
Yeah, Katie's there.
Oh, okay.
Is Varsity there too?
Yeah, we're all there. Oh, I might go out. Have fun. Bye. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
Because it was. Got it, okay.
Okay, there's nothing that's changed in the proposal, it's just he wants to.
John. I do need that. All righty. Thank you, John. We are, can you all hear me? We are moving on to item 3, We are going to have an update and discussion on Stanton's Crossing business.
Wait, what is
Overall.
Overholser?
He's where is he?
Is he in the other room?
I'm here.
Okay, terrific.
Okay.
We just couldn't see you.
Hear his
Good
voice.
evening. Moving on to item 3, we have an update and discussion on Stanton Crossing business plan. Ms. Beauregard, please.
So I'm gonna have Miss Amanda DeMayo come up and introduce this item this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam
Good
Mayor, members of
evening.
council. As you are aware, in 2019, City Council approved the Stanton Crossing Business Plan, which outlined a path for preparing and marketing the site. Since then, several tasks have been completed. See that beautiful water tank out there? But market conditions have shifted and it is appropriate to revisit that plan now. The EDA recently reviewed the status and unanimously supported moving forward with an update. We have Tim Davey of the Timmons Group here tonight to walk us through that process. Given the level of public interest in this topic, tonight's session is an opportunity to review progress to date and understand the scope of the update before any future decisions are made. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Tim.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Tim Davey. I'm thrilled to be here to present our recommendations, but mostly enter a dialogue about where we think the next direction really Stanton Crossing ought to go. I thought it might make some sense to give a little bit of context about our firm's history, not only with this project, but in the economic development space. We've been really fortunate to work in economic development professionally for most of my career. So really over 30 years here in the Valley, quite a lot up in Rockingham County and Augusta County with Mill Place Commerce Park, down in Franklin County with their Summit View Business Park, Allegheny County, what Allegheny County is doing. The Roanoke Regional Partnership, we do a lot of work with those guys in site selection, site evaluation. The Shenandoah Valley Partnership is, Jay's been a good friend of mine for a long time. And other parts of the state, some very, very premier projects that we've played an instrumental role in is even when the chip manufacturing facilities were here 30 years ago, we actually helped Virginia land those and now convert those sites into other uses, places like White Oak Technology Park and Meadowville Technology Park. Where also the Lego plant is now located. So I was very fortunate to work on that property for over 30 years, including when Mr. Timmons used to own that land all the way up until we were fortunate enough to sort of land Lego, and that plant is in its first phase. It's really sort of coming out of the ground and ready to go. So very excited to be here. Our history with this particular piece of property started when the city originally purchased that property. And we borrowed some friends in the economic development community to come up and start sort of framing up, not necessarily a business plan, but a best practice of where public land development might go. And that's really where you guys find yourself. You find yourself in a situation where you get the opportunity to control what happens on a publicly owned piece of property. That's not every city and county in Virginia. There's an awful lot of cities and counties in Virginia that to some degree complain about what the private developers are doing. They complain about the fact that they can't actually get economic development attention. What the state wants is the state wants to partner with localities that do. The Virginia Site Readiness Program is one of those great examples. And we're very proud that Timmons Group actually partnered with the state to actually come up with that program, design it and implement it. And now over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, millions of dollars have been invested in sites, in part because we're starting to see for us to be competitive with North Carolina and Georgia and other places, we have to treat our lands in a way that we can keep up with the market. So I think Amanda did a great job of, suggesting that market forces have changed. I mean, we've had a pandemic since we did the business plan. We've had some prospects, sort of tour and kick the dirt, and we've learned from that. And then we've also had some things that are going on in Virginia right now that, I'll sort of talk about to sort of let you know where we think we're headed with the idea of updating the plan. So we're thrilled to be here and have a conversation with you guys. And thought it made sense to sort of think through not only some of the work that we did after the city bought the property, this idea back in 2019 of actually having a fairly visible business plan with a number of stakeholders that got together for a half a day to actually talk about, what were the different metrics that we could come up with and what kind of things could we achieve on this public land, included Many of the same players that I've just talked about and many of the same players that exist here today from the EDA, members of council at the time, the staff, the partnership dedicated some time, the Shenandoah Valley Partnership dedicated some time. We brought some private developers in. You know, we wanted to make sure that, you know, we weren't really competing with the private developers. I've always sort of said, you know, that's the economic development is sort of the projects the private sector can't afford to do or doesn't have the patience to do, you know, or, you know, really doesn't necessarily have the public funds to do. And the friends at the Buckingham Branch Railroad, you know, it's sort of a unique asset that we can't overlook. But it is interesting to sort of talk about rail themed projects and things like pharmaceutical right now. It's sort of an interesting world. But we've known the people at the Buckingham Branch Railroad for a long time. In the current business plan, you know, we thought it important to try to align ourselves with regional targets and statewide targets. And these were the target industries that we identified at the time that we wanted to make sure that we made some decisions around for a number of different reasons. One, what was the site well positioned for? But two, what were the kind of projects that could create meaningful difference in tax revenue and jobs? That's again, those are the kind of projects that the private sector can't always afford to go ahead and chase. Mr. Timmons taught me a long time ago that, you know, real estate development is all about using somebody else's land and somebody else's money and somebody else's business and placing a deal that works together and make a fee and move on and do it again. Well, public land development's a little bit different. The transaction side of trying to land somebody is not as important as the long-term tax revenue and the jobs that you can create. Private developer doesn't care about that. They care about the transaction. And so that's a sliding scale that we get to actually use to our advantage that not everybody else can to land these kind of, you know, high job, high CapEx kind of investments. So this was the target markets that we had settled on. We had put together sort of a couple different concepts to sort of test fit where some of these things might go. I know you guys are all familiar, you know, with the lay of the land and a lot of the work that was done, the topography, trying to sort of make sure that we could sort of take advantage of the 100 acres that used to be a campus, you know, that is relatively flat, and everything down closer to the interstate is not quite as flat, and try to create some pods, but not try to dictate what happens there. Just try to figure out what best fit there. That's sort of the way that we did the overall vision and concept plans, but these definitely need to be updated because there's been a lot of progress that's been made, and we have to make sure our existing conditions are actually shown. So what can fit on the property is a big part of the plan. Why we are chasing those industries was a big part of that plan as well. We had different tables of people using different blocks to sort of fit what they thought might fit on the property. And each one of those blocks really did contemplate for 100,000 square foot of office, how much land would you need? And within that, how much tax revenue could you generate? How many jobs could you generate? And we come up in the business plan, this taxes per acre and jobs per acre concept to try to make sure that we at least have a metric to sort of aim at. Not make all of our decisions around, but if we're doing this to generate jobs and tax revenue, you do have to be careful that you're not actually going ahead and master planning things either that don't have any market potential, so you're never going to develop this, or don't create the goals to get you the ROI that you're looking for. So this is a very, very effective tool, but it needs to be updated. One of the things that, you know, I always track is, you know, the master plan and $264 million of CapEx is a pretty prominent number, but you guys have read the newspaper recently. There's all sorts of projects that are starting with Bs instead of Ms. And you think about the magnitude of the tax revenue if you're starting with a B instead of an M in front of, you know, your project. And that's what's the reality these days. So we have the opportunity to land projects that are a lot more valuable than $264 million. The original recommendations, some of the work by 2019 had already been going on, and it sort of validated that a lot of the things that we had already started should keep going forward. I didn't design the road that went through the middle of it, but the city was already smart enough to get VDOT to put the money up to start designing that road, you know, that went through Staunton Crossing, which we thought was a great idea. The city had already started on getting brownfields funds to demolish all the buildings, because it's interesting when you're out on game day, you know, there's a couple different challenges. When you're looking at a wooded site, it's hard sometimes to figure out what people can imagine. on a wooded site. So a lot of times you'll use architects' renderings and things like that. Well, I can guarantee you it's a hell of a lot harder to look at 29 crappy looking buildings and imagine your plant on that property. And so getting rid of those buildings was an important component, and the brownfields funding helped us do that. Developing an ROI analysis for each of those different type of industries. We didn't make a lot of progress on that. It was one of the things that we thought was a good complement to the business plan. And we started talking to the Shenandoah Valley Partnership in the state. Their site readiness program now requires an ROI analysis. They're investing state money. They want to get a return. And what's interesting is the way the different entities get a return is the locality gets your return mostly from tax revenue. The state gets their return from jobs. So if you're going to be looking at for a state incentivized project, you have to consider jobs as well as you consider the CapEx that you can actually put in there and your machinery and tools tax and things like that. So having an ROI analysis of our next business plan, I think is going to make a lot of sense. The site readiness program really tries to get publicly owned properties to a tier 4. Tier 4 basically means that somebody can come in and everything that we need to build can be built as fast as they can build their facility. So the utility infrastructure that was recently completed was really the main last link for us to get from tier 3 to tier 4. Some of the tier ranking systems, it's strategic. The element that a lot of people forget about is you sort of think about real estate, especially private real estate. If you get a lot of prospect visits, sometimes the price has a tendency to go up. And the tier ranking system requires that you actually have a handshake agreement that stabilizes the price of the land, which is sometimes hard for a private sector person to agree to do. Public sector people, again, the price of the land is not the most important transaction anymore. And so actually allowing to have some kind of an agreed to price per acre is a pretty easy thing for a city to do. It's hard for a private sector person to do. But we've made great progress on that. I'll talk a lot about the marketing plan that Amanda has been sort of leading, which in public land development space is best in class about what the city is doing right now. So it's got a lot of momentum. And very honestly, for the last couple of years, you haven't been hiring me to do much. You've been hiring the marketing team that is actually collecting data and building brand awareness and talking to site selectors and things like that, which is commendable because we were working on the infrastructure. We were also working on building our brand. Design governance, covenants and guidelines in there, we didn't get very far with that. It's something that we should consider getting teed up, but part of the reason that I'm not a big fan of really having too rigid of design guidelines yet is because we don't know who's going to be the anchor tenant. The anchor tenant really probably wants to be someone who would dictate that. And so that's one of those things that wasn't as high on the list as some of the other things. So the fact that we didn't make progress on that to me doesn't concern me that much. The data center strategies was one of the things that we had put in there. Didn't make a lot of progress on that. And I can talk a lot more about the data center strategies because it probably would be time to understand that market. Because even though it was on our business plan back in 2019, it was sort of an emerging market. And as you all know, it's not emerging anymore. So trying to make sure that we're have data center strategies and guidelines if we choose to pursue that asset class, what those design guidelines would possibly be. And then push forward on every bit of construction that we could get to get us to tier 4. And I'll show you some of the progress on that because that's where you guys have made a ton of progress right now. The water tank and everything else that's out there is you guys made a lot of progress using site readiness money, somebody else's land, somebody else's money, and see if we can get somebody else's business there. The marketing plan, what I was proud to say is we looked at it through a lens of our competition too, because it's important that this all be revisited again, because in the marketing world, 6 years is a long time. And so not only have other regional sites started catching up to us on the site readiness side, some of them are taken off the list because they're already getting bought, so the inventory and the supply and demand needs to be something that we actually go ahead and revisit on the marketing side. This was out of the business plan where we actually tried to figure out where we would spend some of the money in focus on trying to make ourselves ready, and everything on the left, red, yellow, green might be a little bit inverted here. High priority for us, what we should focus on is what's in red, and those are the things that we actually were focused on. Medium priority is some of the things that we're starting to see now in the trends of workforce and training availability and the softer skill side of economic development. And we had made pretty good progress on the infrastructure, at least the public infrastructure, not a ton of work yet on the private infrastructure. And then some of the things in our marketing plan that we said we probably don't need to invest a lot of money in is things that we already had sort of checked off the box. Your transportation infrastructure, your visibility, your site location was all fairly healthy. So we weren't really suggesting that we invest a lot there, and we're still in that same position. This slide I know looks a little bit busy, but this sort of shows you're ready for construction story. We had sewer, we had water, pump stations, water tank, all of those things that want to be in a situation where we can say yes to a prospect, that we can serve their site in the same time that they can actually build their site. The graphic is helpful, but of course needs to be updated, and we need to really put this into the lens of a marketing, sort of marketing perspective. Obviously, you guys sold land to Columbia Gas, and those guys are out there. We need to sort of depict that. I need to make sure we're showing, how the updated buildings might look now that we've put the infrastructure in and things like that. So, for me, it really isn't as much master planning that we need to do from an aspect of reinventing the wheel. We just need to refresh it a little bit. We need to figure out where we are in the aspects of going after the current target markets, though, and that's probably where we want to spend most of our time. This obviously is a feature. The Facebook link that's on the bottom there, if you want to take a minute to link on it, it's actually one of the things on our website at Timmons Group that gets probably the most views every month, because it actually shows the water tank going up, and it actually shows you crawling the bowl up to the top of the tank with the cute little music and stuff like that. So it's sort of cool, to sort of see that, give our engineers that do water and sewer work a lot of kudos for what they did there. But actually Staunton Crossing was one of the places that demonstrated to the state VDP, one of their provisions was they were not interested in putting money towards building out water tanks for municipalities. They sort of thought that's sort of the municipality's job to figure out, what your water supply ought to be. But because of the need for so many advanced manufacturers to have the water supply on site and the pressures that they needed, in the new guidelines, they actually are allowing people to submit grant requests for water tanks now. And Staunton Crossing had a little bit to do with that. So sort of a leader in the clubhouse when it comes to, the site readiness work. This is some of the more softer side of what we had recommended with the business plan, brought a consulting team on board to help Amanda's staff with. And that's really what they've been doing for the last couple of years. We've really been focusing on site selection. We've been focusing on the drumbeat, the common drumbeat that you actually sort of have to keep Staunton Crossing relevant with site selectors, relevant with the regional players, relevant with the state players. And the infrastructure that's been put in place also has got the capacity to import information from the people that are actually clicking on the website now. So one of the thoughts in some of the more progressive cities are how do we then take that input and then go on the offensive and start contacting these people, and seeing if we can start getting more information in their inboxes, generate more leads and things like that. I've taken the time since we met with the EDA a while back to meet with the state about Staunton Crossing specifically, to meet with the region about Staunton Crossing specifically, meet with our marketing team who's been working on this, and talk about what do we need to do to ramp this up and amp this up again. So we're ready for the updated master plan, business plan for us to go ahead and execute. And across the board, the state and the regional people saying prospect visit is up. It is just a matter of time that Staunton Crossing is going to find that project. So it's important for us to understand what kind of projects are we willing to accept, because you will be asked one day to sign or pen a development agreement that says a company's willing to do this. What are you willing to do for us? That's why we need to sort of update the kind of prospects that we want and the kind of business plan that we want to sort of execute. Some of the trends that I sort of talked about that have changed a little bit. You all know, pharmaceuticals are big now. That was something that really launched in Virginia during COVID and is proven to be one of those markets that Virginia is well positioned for. And so that's something that we need to probably rethink what we could potentially land there. The data center and mission critical space, including all of the infrastructure that follows that, is obviously not just in Northern Virginia anymore, and it's not just in Virginia anymore. So we can talk about that and what it would take. You're starting to see things like, small nuclear reactors and on-site generation is one of those things that people are asking about. And I'm not advocating for it. I'm just telling you it's one of those things that people are asking about, and we need to know we need to have an answer to that. I've always recognized that economic development is much more of a site elimination game than a site selection game. And so I've always known that, and we're pretty good at sort of helping, make sure our sites don't get eliminated. But now AI is eliminating sites. So it's amazing what people are finding out about a site and a city and a county and a region before they even show up. I mean, it's unfair, but you have to recognize that that's actually where we're going. So we need to consider that. There's always been a question of labor shed and, where do my employees come from? Quickly behind that now is a question of affordable housing and where do my employees live? And so I believe you guys are in a very good, healthy position to answer both of those questions, but the business plan should articulate that. I've always told everybody, if you're walking a site with a CEO that's a code name project and it's raining out and he asks a question and you have a book with yourself and you basically say, that's in chapter 7. We asked that same question and here's your answer right here. That's a game day strategy that keeps you in play and keeps you from getting eliminated. So we need to know what those questions are going to be and make sure that Amanda's team has got ready answers, to all of those questions. They're really looking at tech strategies now to try to slice and dice everybody's ordinance to try to figure out where they can get a competitive advantage. We talked about that a little bit, back in 2019 about where we might do that in the data center strategies, but I think it's important for us to sort of look at that through the lens of how people are looking at us. The strategic target marketing is what I talked about, is if we're collecting information and there's 500 site selection people in America, we need to target them specifically to make sure that they've got a constant, possibly, a narrative about Staunton Crossing in the Valley, so that we're not more top of mind. It's a great way possibly to use the tools you've already built to collect more information and go more on the defensive than on the defensive. Storytelling, game day strategies, all this stuff gets wrapped into the business plan. And that's why we did it on purpose. If you think about it, a municipality that has an actual business plan for a piece of property, it sets yourself apart already because you're typically talking to business people and they're not going to loan anybody money that doesn't have a business plan. Well, you can sort of get a little bit closer, to a relationship with someone if you think like a business. And that's why we actually do call it the Staunton Crossing business plan. The master plan is just a part of it. The incentives are just a part of it, but the business plan is really what we're looking for. And so our recommendations that we talked to the EDA about are really to revisit a lot of the previous decisions, both to be critical of ourselves and compliment ourselves, where we made good decisions and bad. Do a work session and we can talk about how active and visible and vocal and what kind of process that really needs to be to go ahead and make sure that we're all sort of on the same page, because sort of like, a football analogy, you don't get a chance to change the game plan too much after the whistle blows. You want to make all the changes in the practice sessions. So go ahead and refresh everything on a jobs per acre and a revenue per acre kind of thing to make sure we can really set the stages for a quick go, no go decision on certain projects. Us saying no to a project is a healthy thing, because if it doesn't meet our goals, why would we chase it? Let's be smart enough to know what we don't want to chase. And then just start making sure that we're aligning with our regional partners or aligning with the state partners to make sure we're nimble and quick when it comes for, the kind of prospects that we're after. And then put that updated business plan out with as much pomp and circumstance as we want to, because I think you've got a great marketing team that's already there. All of the work that we're doing, we ought to be telling the world, that we're doing all of this stuff inside. So we haven't made any decisions yet. We've really just sort of laid out a suggested process. And I'm thrilled to hear questions and concerns and comments from you guys to make sure we can incorporate that into the process we recommend that the EDA go through next. So thank you for letting me run through that. It's trying to be respectful and comprehensive at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Davey. That was an excellent update to this plan. Do we have any questions from counselors or comments?
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Um,
Counselor Park.
As you said, and that was wonderful. Thank you for that really comprehensive overview. As you said, we're in the unique position to be stewards of the public lands in Stanton, which is fantastic. And I think I can speak, we all take that really it's a great responsibility. My concern that I've already shared with Amanda is that I feel like it would be inefficient of us to market to data centers. I feel like it would be a waste of time because at the end of the day, I know from talking to constituents and our citizens here, they're not going to go for it. Like they will not go for it. And that's a myriad of reasons, from environmental impacts to the actual relative low permanent jobs that they actually create. The water supply issues. I mean, we're currently in a drought that's affecting, you can look at the drought concerns every week. It's updated weekly with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. And so we're in a severe drought, and I just don't see that being a win, because it just to put that out there and then for it to become an issue and then it becomes a bigger issue. I just don't like, if somebody comes to us and is like, hey, we want to do this. Okay. But to actively market it as such, it just seems to be kind of a waste of time. But that's just something I've been looking into. And in addition to that, it's also coming to my attention from talking that if a data center does go on the property, we would actually owe money back for certain grants that we've received to develop it. So just a lot of things to think about that.
And we're spending a lot of time with clients having the exact same conversation to make sure that all decisions are based on facts. And so we've been doing an awful lot of research, and I'll just share a couple facts that are, I think, important to just sort of throw into that decision, however we choose to make that decision together. The state put in the guidelines, yes, if you go sell it to a data center, you're going to give us our money back. And those are the kind of things that the data centers are glad to pay back. You know, it can be put right into the development agreement that basically says, this is actually the price of the land. It's price of the land plus the $9 million that we got. And for the right data center, if it's got the other components they're looking for, that's actually it would be really easy for them to go ahead and do that based on their models. And so I respect the fact that the state did that because it doesn't create the jobs, but the tax revenue that it does create is obviously a local government issue that we just need to understand. The other point that I can make, I know in Henrico County, the conversion of the chip manufacturing facility that had high fiber connectivity, power connectivity, and water connectivity, we thought when QTS went there would be a great fit as a secondary use. The problem is they don't use any water. So actually, QTS's data center model, the pipes are oversized, the pumps are oversized. And it's proven to be that that's, in a lot of cases, one of those things where not every data center goes to the closed loop system, but most are going to a closed loop system. So I just throw that out, not as to counteract your point, but just make sure we're making a decision, you know, sort of based on actual information. And then the trend that I've been following quite a bit, that is one of those sort of just under the waves kind of thing right now, is the small data centers asking for less than 40 megawatts and less than 100,000 square feet that can actually go vertical and stack on top of themselves. That actually was what we emulated in the master plan, because the place of the site where it is, sort of down there in the area with high terrain and stuff like that, we really thought that small footprint vertically stacked data center was the one that could get some revenue for us, if it were something that we were interested in pursuing. And so that's actually why we didn't take the bigger 100-acre site to put them on there. We actually put it down there back in the backyard down there. And so, and then the fourth thing that I'll just sort of share with something that we're spending a lot of time with clients on, is a dramatically different conversation with speculative developers than it is with hyperscale people like AWS and Google and others. You know, when they actually talk about, you know, whether or not you want them in their community, it's amazing. I mean, the developers want to get all the benefits from representing they can bring Google, but not all of them can actually bring Google. But if we limited our approach to only going after end users instead of third-party people, that's a strategy that a lot of jurisdictions have accepted. And it narrows the game and it makes it higher stakes and harder marketing. But it does make sure that you're not in a situation, you're in a situation where you control the message, not the third-party developer. So those are a couple of points that a lot of our clients are interested in hearing. I'm not trying to convince anybody that's a good or bad idea, but I think it should be a consideration in the discussion about our target markets.
Vice Mayor Harewood, sorry.
Now, the availability of rail on this site was always touted as just a huge plus for it. Now, like in looking at that map of all the available sites on there, how many of them also have that? Is that really as
Yeah.
much of a big push for us?
I started my career in the railroad, so I want to say yes. Matter of fact, that Buckingham Branch Railroad was part of the Chessie system when I used to work on the Chessie system. So I even know that stretch pretty well. And I know the guys at Buckingham Branch very, very well. And so they're an entrepreneurial bunch. It's hard to wait for a rail project, in my opinion.
Yeah. And would that imply heavier industry shipping,
Well,
something like that, or?
Well, pharmaceutical, for example, actually, many of those will use rail if it's available. So typically you're looking for, on the major rail lines, you're looking for what are called unit trains where people are actually getting, hundreds of cars at a time. Buckingham Branch specializes in onesies and twosies kind of thing. So the asset for somebody who maybe not as big and bold, shipping things in and out would be a nice to have. But to me, yeah, waiting for rail served is one of those things that I hope comes back one day. It's an efficient way to move things. It's a, energy efficient way to do things. There's just not a lot of requirements for rail.
Okay.
Counselor Shepherd.
Yes, I know that data centers are slightly controversial. Virginia is very data center friendly. We're the global leader in data centers. We have 571. We have twice as much as both California and Texas. The tax revenue that comes into the Commonwealth of Virginia it's like $140 billion, I think, a year. And the different levels of data centers, I think, is important for people to understand. They're not all giant noisemakers. So there are different levels of them. And I think understanding the difference between the size and the magnitude. There's a huge one going in Farmville. And the reason it's going in Farmville in the middle of nowhere is there are power lines that cross. Yep. And it's just a perfect place to be. But it's my understanding that data centers are not particularly fond of rail and interstates. But that came from a data center developer, not the end user.
We worked for Dominion 15 years ago, and they wanted to make sure that all the concentration wasn't in Northern Virginia. So they actually asked us to look at sites all throughout Virginia to certify sites that were capable of housing a data center. Mm-hmm. And I sort of, making the short story, there was 15 things on the list that the sites had to have and 15 things on the list that the site couldn't have. Rails and interstates were on that list. Well, those two lists are down to two and two. You couldn't be used next to a power plant before either.
Right.
Well, and of course, now it's a desirable place to be, is next to a power plant.
Right.
So it is very interesting how the site selection criteria has changed.
Okay.
And so, again, that trying to convince us to aim for those. I'd sort of a little bit proud of the fact that, Henrico County was one of the first jurisdictions to lower their server rate to attract data centers because it was an emerging market in Central Virginia and they wanted to sort of lead that emerging market, and a bunch of jurisdictions followed. Well, Henrico's already put their server rate back up again because they pretty much said, all right, we're fine. We got enough. We'll put the server rate back up again. And their reasoning was they did it when it was an emerging market and now it's an established market that doesn't need to be subsidized anymore. Mm-hmm. It was about the time that we did this business plan and actually identified that as an emerging market we might consider. But again, we didn't do the research that it might take now. If we
Right.
need to make that decision now, it would take a lot more research now. So it's an amazing trend. My gut is that in 5 years, Virginia will be done building new data centers. So I do, as a consultant, want to make sure that, I pose the question to a lot of our great clients, do you want to be the only jurisdiction in Virginia without one? And the tax revenue that could come from that? If the answer is yes, then that's great. But the tax revenue is pretty impressive. So.
Any other,
I do have a
Counselor
question.
Campbell?
Going back to Vice Mayor Arrowood's question, as a tier 4 certified site now in BEDP, the website actually lists the certified sites by size. So Stanton Crossing is the 9th largest in the state as a certified site. And half of the 8 above us have rail access. We are by far the best from an interstate access standpoint. And I guess my question is, to be more advantageous, wouldn't it be better to be as flexible as possible instead of updating the master plan to show a layout? Wouldn't it be better just to show developable paths and what the services are? And you talked about AI being more dominant in site selection, just keeping the door open of saying, this is what we have to offer, and not putting out a plan that says, well, this one doesn't have this, so it's going to drop it.
Yeah, I think the master plan is a tool to help make sure we understand what can fit. But you're right. You want to market the biggest contiguous site you can market. So yeah, we are in a little bit of a tug of war with VDP because there's a public road that bisects the property. I want to argue the site's still contiguous. They want to argue what's on the left side of the road, what's on the right side of the road, and that's important because it's a down selection process. If you're getting down selected, if you're less than 300 acres, then it's important that we're one big contiguous site. So, but yeah, that's why I try to lead with more the metrics with the drawings as a tool, because I'll guarantee the drawing of the company that shows up next is not going to look anything like the drawings that we put in the book. So it's more of a tool to make a decision and to lead a discussion than it is what we're specifically aiming for.
Okay, and I just want to make that clarification too, because we had several residents email us today just talking about, is a data center going here? And I just want to clarify for everyone that this is, as you just said, a marketing tool of what could be, not what's going to happen.
Data center ones are even, I mean, I recognize it's my job sometimes to draw the map so somebody can hate it on day one because they don't like the colors or the angle or whatever, but it's just a tool. And that's never been more prevalent now than in the mission critical space because their buildings change overnight. So.
Mr. Davy, going back to the original map that was presented, I think back in 2019, it represents a space for retail and office flex space. And we know that retail has brick and mortar retail spaces are not as in demand, nor is office space as in demand. Or is this something that you're finding in the trends in the economic world?
Yeah.
That will retail, in-person retail come back? Is that something that delivers, has a big ROI for a locality?
Yeah.
As with office space?
So the ROI, not so much. And that really is one of those things where that's private land development, in my opinion. That's really where you don't want to be in competition with your developers that are up here. So I know the renderings back then were to try to create a little bit of a mixed use community, and sort of see what might fit. And the drawings were really a function of the people that were at the work session too. And everybody wanted to sort of look and see some different type things. The trends that we're seeing in retail is interesting because during COVID, the national numbers and the regional numbers changed a couple percentage points that a lot of people thought would continue. Well, after COVID, they've reversed back again. And the place where a lot of people are looking at retail is experiential retail. And apparently that is a very healthy market if the numbers work. And so again, where do you put experiential retail inside the city of Staunton? I would argue up against your interstate at Staunton Crossing where you can land a Lego shouldn't be where you put experiential retail. I think you should go after where you can create the highest return for the city, and the experiential retail should be elsewhere.
Private land.
So.
Thank you. Any other
I could-
questions for Mr. Davy?
I also,
I-
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not painfully loud now.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the discussion and a fact-based approach. You said one of the focus, not redoing the whole master plan, but actually tweaking it. And one of the primary focuses would be on looking at the target industry. What's the most appropriate target industry compared to 2019 when we first developed the plan? Would it be appropriate, maybe in tandem with, while you work on the last little bits of getting us to tier 4, the covenants and restrictions, data center strategies, other undone pieces, but still need to be done, to revive some of the discussions with stakeholders? So engage our community and talk about, here are kind of the constellation of industries we think are most appropriate for this site, and here's why we think they may be beneficial, looking at the cost benefit. Would that be appropriate as a first step?
Yeah, so that really goes to process, and that's sort of what we're very respectful of, is the product is a function of the process that you would like us to go through. And so when we did it back in 2019, the press was there during our work session, council was there, EDA was there. And then obviously after the input, then we came back and presented the draft, and then we came back again and presented the final. So however visible and vocal you would like that process to be, we can accommodate that. Absolutely.
My other question is, how quickly do you think we could get this tweaked business plan, get it updated?
90 days. We did the
Excellent.
last one in 90 days, so I feel fairly confident we can do the next one in 90 days.
All right.
I do think the
Question.
I do think the pharmaceutical is a good way to go. I mean, we have Hollister and Merck. Merck has just expanded their plant. So, and it is a huge industry.
And one of the things we're finding too is certain industries are led around by site selection people and others are not. Pharmaceuticals are not. So yeah, you have to customize your outreach if you're going to go in that particular industry, because it's more relational. So that's a good example of, certain places, everybody is one of those 500 site selectors, other industries are not. And we have to rely on the state as the expert there to sort of tell us, if they're on our list, what should we be doing? And then our partner with SVP too. I mean, they're our marketing. I've been friends with Jay for a long time. I can put some pressure on Jay quite a bit too. But then, yeah, we got to have a consistent story from, I get 98%, 97% of the research is done before they even call the state rate.
You'd probably call a pharmaceutical company an anchor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The brand that it brings, the prominence that it brings. Oh, absolutely. You bring a pharmaceutical that starts with $2 billion capital investment. I'd throw the entire property to them and say, what can we do next? So.
All righty. Well, thank you, Mr. Davy. We appreciate all of your time and look forward to this process and moving it forward. And thank you, Mr. Mayo and Jeff. Appreciate it. You all.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Exciting, very exciting. Thank you all. We'll take a break until 7 o'clock. I hope you'll be back here for our regular meeting. Thank you all. Good evening, everybody. It is now 7 o'clock and I'd like to call the April 9th, 2026 regular meeting of the Staunton City Council to order. Please stand as you are able and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's good to see all of you here this evening. And this evening's invocation comes. This evening's.
Jeff, could you mute
Yeah.
yourself?
It's not my phone.
Try it now.
This evening's invocation comes to us from Counselor Shepherd.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Was fortunate enough to invite a special guest to deliver tonight's invocation. And I would invite you, if you'd like, to join me and welcoming Dr. Reverend Edward Scott, pastor of Allen Chapel AME Church in Staunton, the oldest church established by people of color west of the Blue Ridge Mountains. But all are welcome.
Good evening, Reverend Scott.
Say again.
Good evening, Reverend Scott.
Good evening. Good
Say it
evening to
again.
all of
Yeah.
you. So let us pray that heaven's light would shine through our dusk gathering night, that sage counsel will brighten the learned leaps of mind, that the common good will not leave wearing tattered threads of care, that noble sentiment will not wilt from the heat of discontent. The sharp words will blunt and curve and leave our thoughtful guests unscathed. That the zest to do a weighty thing in a town so small might take wing and split the clouds to show the moon. That we might make our children glad, our parents proud, and our enemies are friends. Oh, dear Lord, we do not yearn for much. We yearn instead for everything. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Scott. Well, I don't have really much for my mayor's report this evening because I have been quite preoccupied. Dr. Scott, my lovely young daughter is getting married in 9 days. He was her professor when she was a student at Mary Baldwin, so she's growing up. So I've been very busy organizing that and was on spring break last week. So was able to visit family and very glad to be back in this fine city and to see all of you here. And that's all I have for this evening. Anything from other members of council? Big stuff. All righty.
I would add one thing. Yesterday, City Manager Leslie Beauregard and Josh Knight and Amanda DeMeo and
Blythe. Jessica Blythe.
yeah, Jessica and there was one other person. Was
That was it.
Okay.
Miss Susie Dahl from Mary Baldwin sat next to us.
Yes.
We sat next to her.
yes,
Yeah, she was there.
all attended the inauguration of the 7th president in 118 years at James Madison University. And there was people from all over the state, all over the country that joined, and it was a wonderful occasion. And I was proud to be there and glad other people could attend. It was a nice ceremony.
Wonderful. Thank you. All righty. Well, we will move on to item A then. It is the consent agenda. Per procedure memorandum number 14, it's the policy of City Council to have routine, non-controversial items placed on a consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be voted on in one motion. If separate discussion of an item is requested by any member of council, it shall be removed and considered separately at the end of the regular meeting. Do any council members wish to remove any items to be placed at the end of the regular meeting agenda for separate consideration? Okay, with no request, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor Edwards,
Counselor Campbell, yes, sir.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Would someone like to second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Blair, would you please call the roll?
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Overholtzer,
Mr. Oberholzer?
Aye.
You're on mute. Oh. I thought
No,
he
I'm
said-
not.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Park,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. On to item B, we will have a discussion followed by a public hearing on water use fee, sewer fee, and refuse user fees and landfill fees as included in the FY 2027 proposed budget. Ms. Beauregard.
Thank you. Ms. Moyers is going to provide a presentation. This is actually probably the third time we've shown this presentation. We've been talking about this for a few meetings now. We'll provide this presentation, answer any questions, and then that can be followed by the public hearing on those specific items. I'm actually going to go down there and give moral support to Ms. Moyers. So she's not.
This is going to look very familiar. Stop me at any time when you have a question as I'm going through this. So this is our enterprise funds in the budget. Enterprise funds are not supported by tax revenue. They are meant to be self-sustaining, meant they're supported by the user fees set for the service that we are selling in that fund. The community survey, the most recent community survey showed a decrease in the public's perception of 9% of the overall quality of our utility infrastructure and a 9% rise in the residents wanting it prioritized in the coming 2 years. We struggle as an older city with aging infrastructure. And there are still frozen positions, 2 in the water fund and 1 in the sewer fund, that were frozen in the FY 23 budget to fund a $3 an hour raise for the public works employees. Even with that $3 an hour raise and the COLAs we've had since that raise, the starting rate for an equipment operator is $17.37 an hour. So we have a lot of trouble competing with the private markets. As you know, the equipment operators, it's a very physically demanding job. And so we have a lot of open positions that we are constantly dealing with in the public works area. Staunton's current water rate, we measure on 100 cubic feet, which is about 748 gallons, is $4.06. That increase was put in place July 1st, 2024. And prior to that, we've had a 5% in 2020 and a 5% in 2019, and then going back to 2016 was a 21%. Water fund includes water billing, the water treatment plant, water distribution, which is getting the lines to the end users, utility technical services, those are the meter replacements, meter repair, the meter reading for billing, and the shutoffs for non-payment. Debt service for the water fund, water CIP, and then the water fund share of the payment in lieu of taxes. That is to cover general fund expenditures like HR, IT, finance, their share of those expenditures. So how do we compare? Well, first of all, most other localities, they measure on 1,000 gallons. So we have to do a little conversion of the rate in order to compare. So to convert those to HCF, we are the lowest at 406. They increase from there. Waynesboro's 447, Augusta County 509, and so on and so forth. Most of these do have a flat service charge. We do not, but we do have a minimum bill of 5 HCF. 5-year capital plan for water, a little over 22 million. Annual water line replacements of 450. Our next biggest project in our future is the Richmond Avenue water line, broken down between phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 the construction of that will take place next year. It's currently under design. Phase 2, design in FY 29, construction at FY 30. We will more than likely need a debt issuance as we get to FY 30 if the funding source has not become more clear by then. And then we have various water tank inspections and repairs. The Uniontown Water Extension, construction phase of that is scheduled for FY '28. The water treatment plant filter rehab of 1.2, a roof replacement of 190. And then in this 5-year plan, we do have a North River pipeline study of 200,000. As you know, we have significant unfunded projects in the water fund, most of them relating to our North River pipeline. And we have about 8 million for a new raw water source. We do have healthy fund balance reserves due to the fact that we've received several grants for the water tower and the water infrastructure at the crossing, and a grant for the Gardner Springs project, about $6 million there. But it does not cover our 5-year CIP needs of 22.1 million, nor the $50 million of unfunded capital needs. Our current budget, we set aside about 300,000 toward the capital. Each percent increase is 200, or each 5% is $206,000.
Ms. Morris, could you stop for just a second?
Yep.
Because I've looked at this slide several times.
Uh-huh.
I just want to understand. It says fund balance and reserves, but the fund balance is the first number or all of these numbers?
The 13 million is the
Is-
fund balance available to spend on capital projects.
And then everything below it is an actual
It's a cost.
expense, is a need. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. All right. Yeah, that's a big deficit. Yeah. Thank you.
So moving on to sewer, we charge $5.60 per HCF. This rate went 12 years without an increase. It was increased in July 1st of 2024 from the 488 to 560. This covers the sewer billing, sewer line maintenance, the infrastructure CIP, our share of the Middle River wastewater treatment plant, which is about 73% of the volume that goes through there. The debt service for the wastewater treatment plant, and then the sewer funds share of the payment in lieu of taxes. How does this compare after converting to the HCF? We are the lowest of surrounding localities that are approximately our size. At 560, the next lowest is Waynesboro at 726 plus a flat fee of the 3154.
So can you share what what it is that they have a flat fee of?
Some localities choose to charge a flat fee in addition to their variable fee. We do not, but we do have a minimum bill. So even if you don't use any water, you will be charged for 5 HCF. So it kind of acts like a flat fee, but you do get 5 HCF of usage built in. We have an RFP out for a rate study. I expect that might be a recommendation that comes out of that rate study is to consider a flat fee. 5-year sewer capital is 13.5 million. Annual sewer line replacement of 250. And then we have a Commerce Road sewer upgrade, the New Hope Road and National Avenue sewer upgrade, Lewis Creek sewer upgrade, the design of the old Staunton Steam Laundry sewer relocation, the Uniontown sewer extension, Locust Avenue sewer installation, Sherwood Avenue sewer relocation, and Institute Street sewer relocation. That fund balance is $9 million as of June 2025, the last audit. Like I said, the 5-year plan is 13.5. About $500,000 of our operating revenue is set aside for capital. And then each 5% increase is a little over 200,000. Recent successes in our utility funds, we had some major infrastructure projects, 13.1 million on the Gardner Springs pump station. That was a big project for the city of Staunton. And then the Staunton Crossing water and sewer infrastructure that was mainly grant funded. And then we have the wastewater treatment plant, the clear well replacement is currently, it's back from bid and ready to start. So landfill expenditures. The environmental fee, also known as the refuse fee for a residential customer, is $48.02 every 2 months, so $24.01 per month. That covers the landfill operations, the landfill closure liability, and the landfill capital. In the city side, we have refuse billing, the environmental office, street cleaning, refuse collection, recycling center, and then the city's CIP, which is a replacement of a refuse truck. And then the environmental fund's share of the payment in lieu of taxes. The environmental fund balance is $544,000. It has been declining in the last few years, mainly due to the landfill capital needs. The 27 through 31 CIP, the $1.8 million, that is the refuse truck replacements. There's about 4.8 of landfill capital needs. And $637,000 of the budget is going toward capital needs. It's just not enough to fund what we needed to fund. And the 5% value there is $152,500. This is the landfill's 5-year CIP, about $4.8 million. That's our Staunton share only. Landfill permit number 21, that is Augusta County and Staunton only. Waynesboro was not part of the landfill during that permit cycle. The 5-year plan is about $543,000. Landfill permit number 585, that is all 3 localities. Our share of that is about $4.2 million. The biggest project there is the relocation of the scales in the office and break area. And then eventually the phase 6 construction, that's a $10 million project that I believe is scheduled a few, like FY 29 or 30, right around there. So what happens if we do nothing? We have continued deferred replacements, which lead to failures in the water in the sewer lines, or we may put ourselves in a situation where we have to borrow, like emergency borrowing. And eventually we'll have larger future increases. Path forward, we propose more manageable increases to protect our credit ratings, protect some of our fund balances, and avoid crisis borrowing. Like I said, we do have a utility rate study that is currently out for RFP. Best practice is to perform these studies every 3 to 5 years. I cannot find evidence where the city of Staunton's performed one on the water, sewer, environmental funds ever. And we believe that doing it, hiring a professional that can provide you with a much better product than us, we doing it in-house. So we have increases in this budget. The water would be increased from the 406 to 428. That would allow us to unfreeze those 2 positions that were frozen in FY 23 and put additional funds toward capital. And then the sewer, we would be unfreezing that 1 position that was frozen in FY 23, and additional expenses would go toward capital. The refuse rate, we would increase residential from 2401 to 2750, and commercial would increase by that same percentage. There's a larger increase here because they do not have a healthy fund balance, and we have significant landfill capital needs that we will not be able to cover at the current rates. So putting it all together, averaging maybe 9,000 gallons of bill cycle for household, what does this mean for our customers? Currently, based on current rates, their bill's about $164 every 2 months. It would go up to $178. We still are pretty low compared to those that are in the surrounding area. The minimum bill would go from $110.32 to $120.40. So in the proposed budget, there are also an increase in the landfill tipping fees. The landfill tipping fees stayed the same for 16 years. We did have an increase in FY '24. But we are still lower than our closest neighboring landfill, which will tend to incentivize people to bring more trash here, the commercial haulers, just to get that cheaper tipping fee. The Harrisonburg County Rockingham landfill is about $75 per ton. And we are the lowest. At the $52 a ton. So there is a proposal from the landfill, and all three localities have to agree to it, to increase that tipping fee from $52 to $65 for the commercial and industrial waste. Our residents will still be able to take their additional trash or items to the landfill for free. This affects commercial haulers. There is some increases for the car tires from $4 to $5. If they're on the rim, it'll go from $6 to $8. Freon bearing appliances from $12 to $15 because there's a significant cost there to safely contain that freon that comes out of those. And then the commercial ag tires, I don't know if we have many of those in the city, but it goes from $12 to $15. So any questions on anything I have went through so far?
Ms. Moyer, do you have a ballpark figure of how much of the landfill's revenue comes from their commercial tipping fees?
I'm
assuming that it is some type of study to.
It's not as much for Staunton. It is more for Augusta County and some for Waynesboro. Staunton does not have a big amount of commercial hauling. So this increase in the tipping fee, it will, I think, yield us about a few $100,000. It will not solve our landfill capital problem needs, but it will cover a greater share. But we are, I would say, the smallest when it comes to the effect of this fee.
While we're on the topic of the landfill, I'm just noting that the water and sewer fees are both usage-based, which is good. If somebody wants to save money, they can try to conserve use, and it's a double benefit to the environment and their pocketbook. But the trash fees are not now and have not historically been usage-based. But the numbers show that we're hitting a wall in terms of our ability to pay for that. And yet somebody who puts out a tiny, a couple bags worth of trash and somebody puts out 10, pay the same amount. I'd really like to see us move to a system that is more usage-based, say on the 2 standard types of cans that we have. I understand that staff is not prepared to implement that now, but maybe you could say a few words about that and what it would take to move us to a usage-based payment system on the trash.
Well, we do have additional fees now for throwing away additional trash, the extra can fee, and then the bag tags for additional bags if you go over the limit of the bigger can.
The standard can.
Yes. The charging the different prices between the small can and the large can, that burden's going to fall on our front office staff at the Public Works Department. Unfortunately, they have requested that we move one of their part-time positions to full-time. We have not been able to fund that, and this would put an additional burden on them that I don't think they're ready to handle at this point.
I appreciate that, and I'm willing to pass this as is, but would like some consideration in the future to more.
And we do plan to make that part of our utility rate study when we discuss that with the successful bidder there.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore, you said that study was currently out, or we have
It's an RFP, but
out
yes.
right now.
Mhm. I believe it's due back April 30th.
I'm wondering if any localities have done studies on
price differences for smaller cans and larger cans and whether or not it really does affect behavior. I think basing things on data like that would be helpful. It seems to be common sense, but it's always nice to make decisions based on real data,
Mhm.
not really qualitative.
And we will certainly ask them that question.
I agree, that would be helpful.
And we'd still include the heavy pickup in the spring and fall.
Yes.
And the brush pickup on Wednesdays, I mean, once a month, which helps too.
Yeah. Yes.
Any other questions for Ms. Moyers?
So I think we have a public hearing.
Have a
That
public
public hearing
hearing.
was properly advertised in the Staunton News Leader. So,
Excellent.
all right.
So in a moment, I'll open the public hearing for item B. This hearing provides an opportunity for citizens and others to comment on this specific agenda item. If you wish to speak, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we ask that you limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will notify you if your time expires. For those joining us on Zoom, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak. We will alternate between speakers physically present here and those participating on Zoom. As a reminder, comments should be limited to item B. And once everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, I will close the public hearing. Would anybody like to speak on item B? Please come to the podium if you'd like to. Mr. Knight, do we have any hands raised on Zoom?
We have no hands raised.
Last chance. I will close the public hearing. All right. Any other comments before we? So Ms. Beauregard, when will we see this again at council?
Yeah, no motion required this evening, and this will be considered at your next meeting on April 23rd.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Moyers.
Thank you.
I guess you're stay there, huh?
We are.
Alrighty. Okay,
Gonna
moving
keep
on
talking.
to moving on to item C, we have a discussion followed by a public hearing of an ordinance to establish a budget for fiscal year 2027 to increase the excise tax rate on sale of cigarettes to 40 cents per pack. Ms. Beauregard.
And we're going to talk about the budget generally as well.
In general, yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, this presentation will also look familiar. We've added some slides though based on questions we've received from City Council. And we're going to do the same thing that we just did. Ms. Moyers is going to go through the presentation, have a discussion, answer any questions, and then you can hold the public hearing.
All right. Please stop me if you have any questions. So the overall proposed budget is $168,486,888, which represents a 2.4% increase, almost $4 million. General fund portion of that is 83.3 million, which represents a 4.41% increase over FY26. This budget fully supports schools with a local contribution increase of 7.7% based on the funding formula that was put in place a few years ago. It provides stability in city services and supports employees. There are significant increases in regional agencies that support families and health, and also includes an increase in tax relief for elderly, disabled, and veterans. Focuses on environmental sustainability, creates intentional focus on economic mobility and opportunity in business support and resiliency. This budget also focuses on technology and communication and increases funding and continues to build a path to maintain critical infrastructure. It aligns with the updated 2026-2028 Staunton plan from City Council. There are no proposed tax increases on the real estate or the personal property tax rates and no changes to meals tax or lodging tax in this budget. There is a proposed increase in the cigarette rate excess tax from 30 cents per pack to 40 cents, which will result in additional revenue of $90,000. So where is the revenue coming from? $3.5 million increase the general property taxes is a little over 1 million. The real estate increase is from growth, as it is not an assessment year and the tax rate remains the same. Personal property tax rate increase of 696,000. That is moving the budget closer to what's actually being billed, by the Commissioner of Revenue. That is not a tax rate increase. Sales, meals, business license, and lodging tax, those are all moving the budget closer to the actuals that we are currently seeing. Again, that's the cigarette tax increase of $90,000. That's a 10 cent per pack increase. Service charges, which when we talked about the water, sewer, and environmental fund, the payment in lieu of taxes, you see that figure there coming in as income into the general fund of 197,000. And then we have other service charges like the golf cart and the green fees are bringing in additional revenue. So we're increasing that budget by $75,000 there. Other recreation, not just pools, but it's trips and things like that, of $52,850. Federal and state funding, $860,000. Most of that is restricted. The VDOT maintenance and the DSS and Children's Services Act are a big part of that. So where is the money going? The majority of it, the $1.5 million, is going to Staunton City Schools. Their funding will be $20,366,000. We are implementing phase 2 of the PD comp plan. Phase 1 was in the 26 budget. That is $242,000. Salary and benefits of $627,000. That represents a 3% COLA for employees, full-time and part-time. Increase in health insurance, the grant-funded economic mobility position. And then we did have a nice savings this year from the VRS, our rate decline due to favorable market returns for the VRS plan. And then the clerk of the council position has been eliminated. The net savings there is $52,000. Our rate for VRS declined from 16.77% to 14.54%. The group life decreased from 1.18 to 106. These rates are good for FY 27 and 28. And the jail and the schools both did see the same type of decrease. So there have been several council members interested in more information on the hazardous duty multiplier. We currently have the basic multiplier of 1.7. There has been a request the last few fiscal years to move to the 1.85 so that we can attract and retain employees in those areas. It is a little over $200,000 to do that. So there's a couple options. One, we make it a priority next year, or two, we have found some changes that we can make this year if you wanted to make that happen this year. We feel comfortable increasing the general fund interest revenue. We switched banks about mid-year FY 26. That bank, we are earning a better interest rate, even though interest rates are slowly declining. But we feel that we could increase that by about $100,000 there. The voting software, that's a state mandate that we will have to upgrade in FY 27. We're not proposing that we eliminate it. We're proposing that we cover it with fund balance in that budget. And that would just be part of the fund balance that we did not appropriate this year. And then there are some other operating expenditure reductions that will need to happen in the general fund of a little over $62,000. I have already identified them and talked to departments, and those are achievable. So because this rate affects all city employees, even though only the police, fire, and the sheriff's deputies are the benefit from the higher multiplier, we do have to use some of our water fund, environmental fund, and sewer fund balances to pay for the increased VRS rate on those employees. And then in the stormwater, we're not using fund balance there. We'll just have to reduce our professional fee budget by $1,663. So would you like to pause here to give us feedback or to talk about the hazardous duty multiplier?
Ms. Moyer, if you could explain that one small point that the sworn officers are the ones that are benefiting, But
Yes.
you said it affects all employees. So their insurance, I'm sorry, what they would be
We
paying
have
would
to
go
pay
up?
the higher rate. The rate is about 1.12%. That was the latest rate we were given in December. It's an additional onto your VRS rate. And so you have to pay it on every full-time person's base salary,
Okay.
even though there are only certain departments that will receive the benefit. It is our sworn officers in our police department, our fire department employees, and our sheriff's department deputies.
And so to cover that, you said you would propose taking it from sewer fund balance.
Just for
Part of it.
that's the additional that we have to pay on those employees with that higher VRS rate.
Okay, and that's $2,471. Thank you. Any questions from members of council on the hazardous duty multiplier?
But all of that stays within the city. So we're pulling from everyone to fund the multiplier to the sworn officers, but it's a one-for-one transfer.
Well, we just pay a higher rate, and then when those that are eligible for it retire, they get a higher payout from the VRS.
The benefits city employees as well.
No.
No,
No.
Just the sworn.
we
This
pay
is
for
for-
it, but we don't benefit from it.
Yes.
Once this decision is made, we can't go back. This will be the budget going forward you'll just see it in the lump sum. I guess you would just see it as part of the VRS.
It would just show as part of the benefits
Yeah.
in each of the areas.
Yeah.
So you're using some of the water fund and some of the environmental fund?
That is just because the benefits for those employees will be increasing with the higher VRS rate.
Those employees are in those funds. They're
Yes.
paid in those funds, not the
Mhm.
general fund. Yeah, all Ms. Moyers is trying to do is say we've got employees in the general fund and then we have employees in the other funds.
Mhm.
And she has to break out those costs. That's all. Yeah.
Right, because I just don't want,
There's no transfer going on. It's just
No.
reflecting where those
Okay.
employees are.
because I
And the
don't
rest of the
wanna see-
employees aren't paying anything extra or anything? Is that
Mm-mm.
what you're?
I don't
Is
want
that
to
what
see
you're
a rate
asking?
increase and then you see something is taken from it.
Well, they will have higher benefit costs just because that VRS rate will be increasing. Mhm.
Understandable.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Moyers. I appreciate that you put this in because we had been talking about getting this into our budget.
I
and-
mean, it'd be nice to have to know tonight.
Yeah,
if there really-
I
there are
want
at
to say,
least four of you
I
interested in
support this and I hope that my fellow council members would support this for ours.
I support it. It's just quite a mix on there. Do any of those, I mean, I assume you put these together as the path of least resistance, sort of on that. But I mean, do any of those make you more uncomfortable than others on
No.
that? You feel it's all pretty solid funding sources that we can.
Yes, none of these make me feel uncomfortable.
None
I
cut to
mean,
the
I would
quick.
never make her do anything uncomfortable.
Well,
Although she did say it is my budget, but
Yeah, it's the city
she
manager's
and I
budget.
talked a lot about this.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for the last week and a half, so.
run
the
pretty
interest
close
revenue, we
together.
are still, we still have quite a bit of room there. It's just we were trying to be very conservative in case interest rates declined. We didn't want to over budget, but I think we still have room even with the $100,000. So I'm not uncomfortable, or I would not put it on here.
Just to put this in perspective, what's the amount that we are spending additional annual revenues to help the police officers catch up in terms of salary, sort of professional? Is it 300,000?
Looks like 250, 240, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I just want to point out that this is on top of that $250,000 permanent annual addition to the budget that we'd be adding with this. I guess my preference, I think it's important. I think we want high quality employees, and this it's a helpful incentive. It's the right thing to do, but I would just prefer to spread it out and not to have that double hit in 1 year. This $250,000 annual expenditures in the same year, but spread it out and defer this until the next year. But I think it's worthwhile and it's worth doing.
I agree with Councilor Overholzer. I mean, I want to support this, but I want to make sure we're not missing opportunities. Are there other critical services department-wise that may benefit from something such as the compensation plan that we're doing for the police now before we consider this. Or if this makes sense from a staff standpoint, I'm all for it. I just want to make sure we're not missing an opportunity if we're going to invest more in our critical services and our employees, that we're not missing potentially another
Higher impact.
department need.
You mean within the fire department, within the police department, within?
No, I'm thinking
sheriff's
something like,
office, Or,
I know Public Works has had its challenges over the past few years. Is that a department that needs more resources at this point?
I'm gonna say yes. I mean, we've had a very hard time recruiting for positions, especially in streets. And some of that is pay, because of the pay. So we don't have enough information about that to really have a recommendation this year. But that's definitely something we're gonna have to look at for the FY 28 budget for sure.
So that's all I'm saying, is I want to get to this and I want to have our public safety departments as strong as possible. Obviously, anyone does, but I just want to make sure we're not leapfrogging over other critical city services that may need more need at this point.
I'm not sure that's an apples to apples kind of decision, what is more important? I hear what you're saying, because every department is important.
No, I'm not speaking at it from the
but-
importance they serve the
Mhm.
city. I'm
Yeah.
speaking in terms of just investing in our employees. I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
one side serves a more
Yeah.
important role to the city than the other. They're all critical services. I'm
Right.
just saying, is another department overdue for some type of compensation study like we're doing with the police now, before, as Counselor Overholter said, we
Mhm.
give double benefit to a certain department?
Go back and look at that? I mean,
Well, I don't know if we could, we won't be able to look at that for this year's budget.
Yeah, and
So that would be something, and I was just thinking about the last time we did kind of a comprehensive compensation study, which I think was
2 or 3 years ago.
It was like FY 22, I think. It's been a long time. So maybe, and I'll talk to Mr. Venn about this. It might be time to do that, or do a micro study in a department. So, but we won't be able to pull anything for this budget together. So.
And I understand that. Like I said, I obviously support this, if we're comfortable with the funding path forward each year, but I just want to keep in mind that we have other departments that have, I feel, important needs in this same ballpark.
I agree. And just looking at the sewer funds and the funds that were unfrozen, or the positions that were unfrozen, it seems like Public Works might be benefiting from a few more positions. And of course, I hope that lightens the load for that department. But I do think, of course, they probably would need an increase, looking at the starting salary in order to stay competitive with private industry.
because they're looking at also shortages of staff members, staff also in those departments that will get the increase. They're prioritizing over what? Over one or the other. So,
This
I
is,
I
oh, sorry,
support
go ahead.
this.
Sorry.
Because if we don't look at this today and say, no, wait till 2028, then there's always something else that's going to come up that might take it away in 2028. I mean, there's always going to be something.
Yeah, we heard this last year. I mean, it was presented to us last year. I don't know if it was presented to us the year prior, but I feel like it's an important thing. These people risk their lives for us. And, they are away from their families for long periods of time. They put themselves in danger. They keep us safe. And not that teachers don't, and Public Works people, but this is something that's been asked of us, and it's Ms. Moyers and Ms. Beauregard have found some money to fund that this year. and it is a recruiting tool. And as others have said, we do want the best working for us. I'm comfortable supporting this.
Yeah, because if this will help fill those empty positions that they have, I mean, yeah, so that they could be fully staffed. I'm all for it.
I do believe a little over half of the localities in Virginia have it. Harrisonburg and Rockingham have had it for a while. The jail will have it in their FY27 budget. They're taking advantage of that reduction in the VRS rate to help cover it. I believe in Augusta County, it's in their 5-year plan, and I'm not sure where Waynesboro stands. I do know it has been requested of them the last few years. I'm not sure their final decision in their FY27 budget.
Yeah, I definitely support it. I want to be as competitive as possible. And I definitely am on board
Yeah, it's
right now.
a retention tool as well. So
I support it as well. I still think we could I understand that the transient occupancy tax, the lion's share of that money goes to tourism, but transient occupancy also puts a burden on water and trash, and we're severely underfunded. So perhaps part of that money, we could increase that tax and allocate part of that funding to the sewer and water fund. And that would free up some revenue to pay for that.
Well, it sounds like Counselor Woods, myself, Vice Mayor Arrowood.
I'm for it.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your work on that, Ms. Moyers and Beauregard.
So moving on with how the additional revenue was being allocated, other expenses, about 888,000. A big portion of that is the VDOT, the state money for the maintenance of the eligible streets. A $70,000 additional tax relief, that's elderly, disabled, and veteran tax relief. 150,000 for the implementation of and migration to the Microsoft Office 365. The voting registrar tabulation software, like I said, that that would be changed to be funded with fund balance. That is a one-time expenditure. It's a state mandate. 44,000 for the Staunton crossing mowing, and an additional 30,000 for the enterprise zone incentives. There's 30,000 in the budget to replace 30 door access readers. That's a security item. 20,000 for additional training funds for the police department. 15,000 for a new CAD to CAD maintenance fee that allows 911 systems to get real-time information between localities. And 15,000 of the $90,000 cigarette tax increase will be used to support pilot programs and education geared to reducing refuse and increasing recycling. And then there's about 79,000 for all other operating increases. So on the outside agencies and our SAL partnerships, there is a significant increase in our Department of Social Services expenditures and CSA funds. That's the Children's Services Act of 7.8%. Some of that is state and federally funded. So of that 561,000, 316,000 will come from the state and federal sources of revenue. But that does leave 245,000 that we have to fund locally. That's 11.2% increase in our share of those expenditures. The Juvenile Detention Center, our share of that is going up 23.7%, which equals $54,000. Our usage of that has increased in the FY27 budget. Valley Community Services Board, increase of 7.6% of 31,238. We are, this does fully fund our 10% required match there. The Health Department is increasing 15,384, Office on Youth, 10,749. And then one of the new outside agencies that is funded in the FY27 budget is $10,000 to the Shenandoah Valley Small Business Development. Some of that is being funded by a reduction of $5,000 to the Staunton Community Capital Fund. There's $10,000 in this budget for the Stanton Augusta County African American Research Society. That is a one-time expenditure that will be funded with fund balance too. And then additional SGDA, which is the downtown tax of $8,479, a small increase of $415 for the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission. The animal shelter budget is a decrease of $6,911. That is going down a little bit further with the most recent update we got from them. So it will be, I think, about $8,500 savings there. And then the most significant decrease is the Middle River Regional Jail of about $392,000. That's 11.3% decrease, and that is made up of two different things. Our usage of the jail, so therefore our share of the expenditures decreased in the FY27 budget, and they are returning some of their accumulated fund balance to the localities because they have enough to cover their 5-year CIP and their safety net. And the additional will be returned to localities. It's $750,000 a year for the next 7 years. And as that ends, their debt service will be paid off. So we will not have to make up that difference when that time comes. We'll see an additional savings from the reduction in that debt service. And there's the slide on that. Our share of expenditures decreased from 24.29% to 23%. Education, we just had a work session with city and schools. Their increase is about 7.7%, which is 1.461 million. They have a 3% COLA, just like the city, but they do have an extra 1% additional raise for their step 20 and above. So that is their veteran teachers. They have 6 new positions. And their outstanding budget debt service is about 65% of the city's general fund debt. So health and welfare, it's an increase of $678,000. We talked about most of these already. Public Works, increase of $601,000. Main drivers here. The biggest part is that VDOT reimbursable money spent on things like paving, sidewalk repairs, line painting, things like that, as long as it's on an eligible street. And then the 3% cost of living there. All other operating increases are $33,000. So we do have some unfunded requests in this budget. They requested a design engineer position of for $121,000 that remains unfunded. An additional full-time custodian for the library. This would mainly be during the day of $63,000. An additional part-time custodian for the new JDR courthouse. An additional part-time building maintenance staff. They did request that one of their part-time front office staff be moved to full-time. That remains unfunded. And then there are $68,000 of other operating requests that are unfunded. Public safety, this number will change now, but there was an increase of 45. That is because of that Middle River Regional Jail is such a large decrease, and it's offsetting the PD comp plan, the 3% cost of living. So the hazardous duty multiplier, that will be in the budget that we bring back to you at the next council meeting. 3 additional staff members for fire department. That's not a new request. I believe that was in the last few fiscal years too. That is unfunded. There are 3 replacement vehicles for the police department. They remain unfunded. Fire department comp plan proposal that was put forth of $60,000 remains unfunded, and unfunded operating request of $17,520. Judicial increase of $48,554. The main driver here is a 3% cost of living increase, offset by the decrease of the city no longer renting the Augusta County Courthouse of $60,592 per year. There are unfunded requests in this area. 4 additional sheriff deputies, a little over 300,000. 4 additional vehicles for the sheriff's department of $256,000. Sheriff department compensation improvements of $53,000, and operating requests of almost $7,000. General fund increase of $464,000. The biggest driver there is the migration of the Microsoft Office 365 to cloud. And then the grant-funded economic mobility position, the grant covers the salary of that position and operating expenses of a little over $29,000. In here is also the voting software upgrade of $50,000. Unfunded positions in this area, the registrar requested that we move her two part-time positions to full-time. It would cost the city a little over $40,000. That is currently unfunded. The contractual agreements that you see for 145, that is our first year of maintenance on our new regional radio project. We will not need that funding until 1 year after we go live. And that is projected to go live later in June unless it's been delayed. So we don't predict that we'll need that amount in the FY27 budget, but you will probably see it in FY28 again. The assessor requested a vehicle replacement for his office of $30,000, and that is currently not funded. An operating request of $45,311 for the general government area remain unfunded. Community development increase of $140,324. The big items there is adding the Staunton crossing mowing. They requested 88. We are funding half of it. This has been funded the last few years from the leftover money from where we tore down the buildings that was sitting in the CIP. We've been paying for the maintenance of the crossing out of that, but we are running out of funds there. We'll still have enough to make it partway through FY27. That's why half of their request is being funded and not the entire amount. Enterprise zone incentives, we are increasing that by $30,000 back to the $50,000 amount that it was a few years ago. And then the 3% cost of living. There was a request for small area planning of $50,000 that remains unfunded. And then the other half of that maintenance of facilities. And then the operating request of $60,266 is unfunded. Recreation, parks, and library increase of $77,480. Most of that is the 3% COLA, with some of it an increase of part-time wages for the lifeguards to extend the pool season. Library furniture and computer equipment. Request of $32,170. That is not funded in the FY27 budget. Parks and Rec equipment of $415,700. That remains unfunded. I will remind you that we did start them a capital reserve of $100,000. So they do have access to that now to replace their more important pieces of equipment that do not get funded in this budget. And then an operating expense request altogether of $49,000 that is unfunded. So budget balancing, there were about $395,000 worth of operating expense increases that we were able to fund by just aligning budget lines that have not been utilized or not fully utilized and moving the money to where it is better served. CIP funding, a majority of it we would be funded with carryover of $3.5 million. The upgraded or new positions that were requested are not funded are $1.2 million. There's about $1.5 in operational and equipment expenditures that remain unfunded. The new outside agencies is about $95,000. And to remind you, we have $300,000 built in vacancy savings. And then the budget, we're relying on the debt service sinking fund balance of almost $1 million to fund that difference between the general fund transfer and what we actually owe.
So before we go here, we're going to switch gears in a minute and talk about one specific item related to the $15,000 that's coming from the cigarette tax revenue. And Mr. Knight is going to talk about that. But I wanted to stop and see if there are any questions, if there are any other issues that you think that you're thinking of. We're going to talk about this after we're going to get through this section, and then we'll talk about the CIP, and I think that's to wrap up our presentation. So any questions or thoughts so far?
Guess the only expenditure I saw that I question is mowing Staunton Crossing.
Yeah.
That you question? What do you
Mowing
mean?
Staunton Crossing.
Because when
There's
we
just
get-
a lot of money to mow.
It's
Yeah.
88,000.
How many times a year is that?
How much does a goat cost?
Goat busters? I don't know how often they are going out there. I kind of thought it was on demand, but I'm not exactly sure.
I believe it was weekly, but we changed the contract to be, we'll let them know when it
Well,
needs to be mowed.
Well,
to
yeah,
save some
that's what I
money.
mean, on demand, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's to make the area look nice.
Right.
It's to
Oh,
keep
yeah.
it, you know.
And it's
Now, obviously, once
298
they're
acres.
sold and things happen, then that kind of, doesn't need to happen anymore, but. Any other questions or thoughts right now?
No, thank you.
Not really.
Not really.
Third or fourth time we've seen
I
this,
know,
I think.
I know.
I just, you want to be able to say yes to everything, but any city that can say that it is charging too much.
Okay, so Mr. Knight, we're gonna switch gears for a minute. This is a new initiative that we're gonna use some of the funds coming from the increased cigarette tax rate. So I'll stop talking and let Mr. Knight walk you through this.
We just wanted to give you an update, primarily because we've been able to set up some meetings recently, have some discussions with some partners in the area. With some of that money, that 15 grand, we are looking largely to make this an educational process. And with
Yours needs to be muted. You do it.
But the whole idea, of course, being that every ton diverted from the landfill is saving in our pocket. It's money for something else. I know we've talked about this a bunch of times in a bunch of different ways, and there are different ways to get there. So we've been talking with a few different groups. That money, again, coming from the cigarette tax, dedicating it to some pilot programs and outreach. One of the groups that we talked to, I guess two that really fall under that Black Bear Compost, was Eric himself with Black Bear Compost. One of my first questions for him is, what sort of capacity does he have? Does he have the space and the capacity? If we've tried to find a way to really ramp up composting in the city, keep it out of the landfill. One of the important pieces to that puzzle there is that composting with Black Bear comes at a cost. You're of course keeping things out of landfill, so you are saving money there, but there are tipping fees and there are fees to partake in that program. Right now, Shenandoah Green does it, and they do it with, I believe, 9 bins around the city. And depending on how much usage they get, they cost different amounts. But for example, right now they're funding one of the bins at the recycle center for roughly $1,200 a year. So it's not a cheap thing, but it is an option. I think it's something that we want to continue to look into. And Shenandoah Green, I was very nervous that they would feel like we were stepping on their toes. And that is not how they felt. They would love the city to help out, become a bigger proponent and a bigger part of their process. So that's something we'll continue to talk to them about. One of the other things that has come up is the cigarette butt collection. While it's obviously not going to take a lot of weight out of the landfill, it is, according to Shenandoah Green, by and large, one of the biggest, or I guess the most prolific piece of litter that they pick up when they do their cleanups. Filled, of course, with toxic chemicals and plastic. So that is one of the other things that has come up. There's a recycle program that you can partake in with a cigarette company out of New Mexico. You send them their stuff, they recycle it. So again, just another thing that we're kind of looking into. It would involve putting bins like that around town. So how much does that actually change behavior? I don't know. That was kind of what we were talking about with Shenandoah Green as well. But again, just wanted to kind of bring up to speed with what we're looking at here. As far as the educational side of things, looking at kind of a dual approach here. I think going lean probably speaks to the vast majority of people. Taking less weight to the landfill saves us money. We can do other projects. And then, of course, we also can promote that it is a much greener way of doing things as well. Resilient community, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So my hope is kind of that two-pronged approach, saving money, going lean, and then, of course, going green as well. That we'll be able to really kind of get people rallied around this and trying to put that effort in toward lower trash. We're currently, of course, still in the discovery phase, evaluating really what staff capacity has, especially if we did try and do some of our own composting or anything like that. Not the city doing the composting, excuse me, but working directly with Black Bear. So again, still very much trying to figure out what we can and can't handle. High visibility, low cost projects. Right now, one of them is to show residents exactly where recycling is going. I hear it regularly, whether it's at work from residents or with my family even. It's like, oh, that just ends up in the landfill anyway. Well, we know it doesn't. We know where it goes. And I think showing people that is is really helpful, very educational. Clear recycling guidelines. Alex was working on this actually today on the website, revamping part of that web page so that we can have a recycling wizard. Type in what you have, your question about. It'll tell you whether you can take it to our site or if it needs to go somewhere else. And then I think we have an opportunity here with some of the physical mailers with more information, really kind of encouraging people, again, with that idea of going lean and going green. I know the calendar got a lot of good feedback. It had some good information on there, and I think we can continue to build on that. And then targeting our school partners as well. We've talked, Eric with Black Bear Compost talked about the programs they have in Albemarle County and in Charlottesville with their schools to do composting. A lot of it really just does kind of come back to the dollars have to make them make sense. So that is a big part of that and something we're looking at. One other thing that has come up a few times is the compactor for recycling. The idea here is, of course, to reduce trips and reduce the cost to haul recyclables to Sunoco or Dave's Recycling. What we've learned officially from Public Works is they do not believe the compactor from Staunton Crossing is going to be a feasible option. I had never seen it. I got a picture today. This is what it is, and they just don't really see how they could use that at the recycling center. One of the options that they are considering or had talked to a business about was buying a new compactor. Currently, that is not funded, but that was something that they had at least explored. What I think they might prefer, and something that they actually do right now with cardboard, if you've been out there, is using an old trash truck to compact and then haul the plastic recyclables away. So that's kind of where our conversations have made it to at this point. We have a lot more to do, but I think we can really start to dive into some of the educational stuff now. Hoping that we'll get some of those changes on the website here really within the next week. So just really encouraging people, showing people the difference they're making, and I think that'll go a long way. If you have any questions,
Well, is there any opportunity in the future for better sorting devices at the endpoint so we could one day maybe look at curbside again?
Every time curbside comes up, I'm basically told no. From what I understand, I don't see how that is going to happen. The nice thing is now is that everything that makes it to that recycle center goes where it's supposed to go because it has been sorted. There's an employee there, Shell's watching as things come in, making sure things go where they're supposed to. And then people can be confident that they've taken the time to do it and it's actually being recycled. A lot of times you end up with contamination with its curbside or any other sort of pickup method. So I think that knowing that the effort people are putting in actually leads to the outcome we're hoping for it really has to be hit home, maybe harder. I think that just because it was easy when it was curbside didn't mean that it was always ending the way you thought it was. And I think that's probably a big part of the message.
The other part about having it centralized is the flexibility we have to adjust with the market because recycling can be a chaotic market at times. And that was the reason. That was why we had to stop taking plastics for a while. And if you have a centralized system, then you can stop taking something or you can start to take something. And it's much more difficult if it's curbside. So Mr. Knight's right. We know what we can recycle. We can get the word out. People bring it. We can check it. And it's a much more controlled process and things go where they're supposed to go. So, but we're looking at other ways, like for instance, if they're going to use an old trash truck, they'll need a new trash truck. And Mr. Moyers, we've talked about this and that's also not funded. So if that's something we need to explore, then we'll need to come back to obviously with a funding source, if that's one thought, because that's not going to, 15,000 is not going to touch that, obviously.
I really appreciate
that. Perfect example is earlier this year, they asked if we could push out that, hey, please separate aluminum from tin and other metal, just because we could get more money for it if it's already separated when we take it. And having it at that location, one and done, they get 2 separate bins and then it's good to go. So I think it does certainly allow for them to control what they're actually sending off.
They do a great job. The team out there, they do a great job trying to educate people.
They have the magnet. If you don't know, they do the magnet. It's metal. Put it in the metal. Yeah, agreed. Well,
thank you for these ideas, and particularly for the outreach.
Obviously, we'll
yes,
be coming
can you hear
back
me?
to you all once, July 1st, the money will be available now and then as far as, what we're going to start pushing out. So.
Excellent.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Hello?
So we'll move on to the CIP. The CIP, the updated 5-year plan will be adopted along with the budget, what's at least scheduled to be adopted along with the budget at the next city council meeting. The transfer to the CIP that's coming out of the general fund is currently 1.5 million. We have the 3 reserves that were set up a few years ago for Uniontown, West End, and Library. And then last year in the FY26 budget, we added what was the value of 2 cents on the 2025 rate, 657,000. Our first part of that went toward the tunnel repairs that are currently happening. So since the CIP was introduced to City Council, I believe it was the end of February, there are some changes that have been made. We've added strategic areas from the updated Staunton plan on the project sheets. We added project CD 2603, which is the Uniontown blight removal. Changed the funding source on the recreation master plan and the duck pond dredging to be funded with carryover. The 2 Lewis Street sewer projects were showing as unfunded, unscheduled. They're currently still unfunded, or funding will be determined as we get closer, but they are scheduled for 2031. And then there was a pickup truck replacement in the environmental fund that was shown as funded is now unfunded. This is the city infrastructure repairs and improvement, a new reserve that was set up with the 2026 budget. A new reserve for environmental sustainability and resiliency that is being proposed starting at FY27. That is related to the city council goal of resilient and sustainable community. Proposed funding would be from carryover starting at 100,000 in FY27 and eventually building up to 250,000 by 2031. Biking, walking, infrastructure and amenities. This is not new. This is just combining 3 existing reserves. The new sidewalk, the biking and pedestrian, and the greenways reserves. And that funding that you see for FY27 through FY31 is not new. It's just those 3 reserves combined into one. Reimagining Booker T. Washington School is a new project, aligns with City Council goal of economic vibrant community. We would fund a consultant to facilitate a community visioning process. It's scheduled to begin FY26 and fund it with the West End Reserve Fund. Recreation Master Plan, that is new to the 27-31 CIP. Estimated cost is 90,000. The last assessment was in 2007, and it would now be funded with carryover funding. Re-envisioning downtown, that is a new project in the updated CIP. Estimated cost of 100,000 would be funded if we have the general fund carryover. And it relates to the an economically vibrant community city council goal. Development of the remainder of the JDR District Court site, that is a new project. Estimated cost of 250,000, and that is related to the updated Staunton plan as well. Other general fund projects, new on here is the duck pond dredging. And then the salt equipment storage building, that is at Public Works for 350. And I believe those are the only new ones in the updated plan. Uniontown Neighborhood Action Plan, this is not new. This is just bringing all the projects, whether it's general fund, water or sewer, into one slide. It's currently, I believe we're wrapping up the PER, getting ready to go under design, and with construction, I believe is FY28. Water fund projects, these are the same projects that you saw in the enterprise fund, the utility presentation a little bit ago. And then we have the sewer fund projects. Stormwater currently looking out 5 years. We just have the Green Hills Industrial Park basin retrofit for 1.4. I think we're waiting on updated DEQ requirements there before we decide the next big project. And that concludes the slides that I had to go over with you tonight. I can take questions now.
That Lake Thames continuous monitoring control system, that is kind of a flood mitigation system, isn't it? I mean, Lake Thames was sort of designed to be catch point,
Yes, it will allow it to like fill up and control
lower the level
release.
before a big
Mhm.
storm, that kind of thing. Okay.
And that is currently underway, I believe, both phases. It was originally going to be separated into two phases, and we're just doing it all at once.
What's going on? Any questions before we start the public hearing? Okay. I'll now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We'll alternate between individuals physically present and those that have their hands raised on the Zoom platform. Again, this hearing is for item C only. Once everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, I will close the public hearing. Would anybody present like to speak? Please come to the podium. Mr. Knight, do we have hand raised on Zoom?
We have no hands raised.
Last chance? What we just discussed, the budget, the proposed budget, the city managers, everything that we just discussed.
Could you come up to the
It-
podium, sir?
Sure. This is for public comment, so if you have a question, we'll answer it at the end of the meeting, though. Okay. We'll talk after the meeting. Thank you, sir. Any hands raised?
There are no hands raised.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. And Ms. Beauregard, so we will see this again.
So I guess my question to you all is, did we have a necessity for a work session next week? Which is supposed to be on the 16th? Or do we just speak again on the 23rd? If there's any issues that come up between now and then, we can make adjustments on the 23rd, which we've done before. But otherwise, if you all are comfortable, then we can cancel next week's work session.
Council, any thoughts? It feels to me that we can skip next week's meeting. That we've ironed.
Unless staff sees a need for it, I don't.
No. Have the feedback on the hazardous duty multiplier, which will be in the budget ordinance in 2 weeks. That will be a change.
All right, I think the consensus that
She left.
she left you. I think it's the consensus that we can,
She snuck away.
we can cancel the meeting. Thank you, Ms. Beauregard, and thank you, Ms. Moyers, and everybody who's, wherever you are.
All right.
Ms. Beauregard, we have matters from the city manager
I'll just stay
and
here
we,
and do it.
okay, perfect,
Yes, I have a few things.
terrific.
I mentioned this at the last meeting, but one more reminder that next Wednesday, the Staunton Flood Resilience Plan is available in draft form on our website. And next Wednesday, April 15th, the city will host a community meeting and a listening session to discuss the draft plan. And that will be at 6 p.m. at the library next Wednesday, April 15th. And if you go to our news page, you can find that press release with a link to the draft plan. Also, on Saturday, this is really exciting. The Fire Station 2 is 20 years old. So on Saturday, April 11th, from 12 to 4, 302 Grubert Avenue, there'll be a celebration, and there'll be food, drinks, and cake, a fire safety trailer, free smoke detectors, tours of the station and apparatus, and 2 former fire chiefs will be there, who I don't know either of these gentlemen, so I look forward to meeting them. So that is Saturday, April 11th from 12 to 4. So come and celebrate with us. Fire Station number 2 is 20 years old. And then finally, if you've been by the library, you've seen some work on the terrace project. The steel supports have been installed, or they should have been installed by the end of today. So things are happening, so that's great. And that is all I have this evening, Madam Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Beauregard. Now it is time for the public. Our final item on the agenda is matters from the public. This portion of the meeting is set aside for council to hear comments from citizens and others on a wide variety of topics. A copy of the Staunton City Council's Matters from the Public guidelines is available in paper form on the desk by the side door and online on the City of Staunton's website. We ask that you please familiarize yourself with those guidelines before speaking. If you would like to address council, please come forward to the podium or raise your hand on Zoom. When it's your turn, please state your name and address for the record and limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will let you know if your time expires. As a reminder, this is a time for council to listen. If you are seeking a response or follow-up to your question or comment, please speak with the city manager, Leslie Beauregard, or a member of council following the meeting. If anyone would like to speak at Matters from the Public, please come to the podium. It's been a while, Ms. Connors.
Back in fresh.
Go right in.
Hopefully I'll be up here in a couple of weeks.
Yes, you will.
Too. So Cindy Connors, 106A Skyline Avenue. We thank you, Josh, for the presentation on reducing waste in the landfill. And I also have to thank Josh for his patience, because every time he posts about trash, I make a comment. And I 100% agree. We need to lessen the amount of trash that goes in the landfill. And and it's weeding season, and I would be happy to put my yard waste in a trash can and pay $50 to have it picked up in the special yard waste pickup if I didn't have to have a ginormous, unmanageable, nowhere I can store it trash can. It's the same reason why I have a little trash can, for my regular trash, and the city accommodated that. So my neighbor right next door pays for the yard waste pickup. So they just have to stop and pick up mine too. And I talked about some suggestions. If the city doesn't want to buy trash cans, it could be done with a sticker or some kind of thing that we put on a trash can that we unfortunately can't use anymore thanks to the new trash pickup. I have a perfectly awesome, almost exactly the same trash can, just happens to be black, right? We could paint the lid tan, we could do something. So that's my suggestion for the evening, that we tweak that process so more people could participate in the yard waste pickup. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Connors. Mr. Knight, do we have a hand raised on Zoom?
We have no hands raised.
Good evening, Dr. Weitzel. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Leanne Weitzel. I'm at 2707 Old Grove Road in Staunton, but I'm here this evening to represent Valley Tech. And I'm also here with Mr. Chris Earhart, who's one of our founding members of our board of directors. And I appreciate Ms. Parks remembering that we were here about this time last year, and that's sort of why we're back. We just wanted to, again, visit you and say thank you. And maybe just give you a few updates on some things at Valley Tech. We know as community servants, you sometimes have a thankless task, but we appreciate your efforts to support education, certainly, but also just to secure the best for our communities. And we want you to know we're grateful for your service. We know it's not easy. We want to thank you also for your continued commitment to supporting advanced learning and technical education. And just as we are taking the opportunity to speak with you this evening, we continue to talk with our state legislators as well. We're seeking some state funding streams for regional CTE programs similar to other regional programs like Governor School or Alternative Ed or Special Ed. It seems that those have state funding, but regional CTE, for what reason, does not. So we're going to continue those conversations in the fall, and we invite you to join us in those efforts. We continue to grow technical education by adding new programs such as firefighting, industrial maintenance, aviation, and just by increasing enrollment in all of our programs. For next year's incoming class, we had 675 applications for 550 spots, which is about 80% of the students we were able to serve. The number of spots is limited by DOE's class size requirements, current staffing, and space. In May, we will recognize about 400 students who will have completed a technical program. And so we're excited by that. If you think about most high schools in our area, most high schools graduating class is 200. We're going to recognize 400 students. Our staff's inspired and committed and passionate about the opportunity to shape the next generation of mechanics and electricians and nurses and law enforcement officers and teachers. This year, our students were state winners in aviation, precision machining, motor control, cosmetology, diesel mechanics, phlebotomy, patient care, and construction. We're grateful to our local businesses who provide on-the-job training for those students while they're still in high school. In May, we'll also celebrate having a signing day. Many of those students who participated in these internships while they were in high school will be moving to full-time employment with these people. And we feel like that's certainly something we're celebrating for both the employers as well as the students and their families. If you found a pen, copper pen by your thing, I appreciate you letting me just drop things. I'm not sure, you may want to secure in this day and age a little bit, but that pen was made by our precision machining class.
Amazing.
And if they started with something that looks like this and ended up with that. And so I wanted to share that with you just from the standpoint of just giving you an opportunity to see and feel and have something maybe to remember us by and realize what our students are doing. We not only provide the skilled training, there are lots of opportunities for skilled training in the area. But I think what sets us apart is we try to also teach the personal and professional responsibility that we know is needed for success in our young people. We take great pride in not only what our students can do, which you're holding in your hand, but mostly who are they going to become. And that's really, we feel like, is characterizes what we try to do and try to maintain and continue the tradition and the values and the work ethic and the ingenuity and initiative that the Valley is known for, and certainly our area here. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do. And certainly we'd like to extend an invitation for you to visit at any time. Just reach out and we'll be glad to have you visit.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a hand raised?
Madam Mayor, we have no hands raised.
Anyone follow this? Come on up. Still no hand raised?
Can you get these in purple?
All right. Well, with no other hands raised and no one coming toward the podium, the Stanton City Council meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.